Chapter 8:19. Gong Yimo shook her head. I only talk to Hua when I'm in China. I don't usually talk to them. They're very childish. Kim Yoon chuckled. He had almost forgotten that Mo was a little genius, especially when it came to physics. Mo, have you thought it through? If you don't go to school, it'll be very boring staying at home. Gong Yimo nodded firmly. I've thought it through. I can hire a tutor at home. I can also plant flowers. I'll wait for you to come back. The words wait for you to come back pierced Kim Yoon's heart. He couldn't help but want to kiss Gong Yimo, but he didn't expect her to be so nervous that she avoided him. Seeing Kim Yoon's stunned expression, Gong Yimo quickly said, Brother, it's not that I don't like you. I just suddenly remembered what I saw today. That couple also kissed first, and then, Kim Yoon's eyes darkened, and his voice became hoarse. As the lights weren't turned on, the room was a little dark. Gong Yimo couldn't see Kim Yoon's expression, but she could feel the shocking heat from his body. Then if brother did the same to Mo, would Mo be scared? Gong Yimo widened her eyes. Did Mo do something wrong? Why would brother do that? Kim Yoon suddenly had a headache. In the past, he thought that Mo was obsessed with studying and didn't like external things. But now, she didn't know anything about relationships. If he suddenly did something, wouldn't it scare her? Kim Yoon stroked her hair to comfort her. Mo didn't do anything wrong. Brother was just giving an example. Mo, he thought for a moment and said word by word, Mo just needs to know that brother will never hurt you. Gong Yimo finally felt relieved and smiled. She nodded. I believe in my brother. Under Gong Yimo's insistence, Kim Yoon had no choice but to hire another teacher for her. His requirements were very high. In addition to having good knowledge, the teacher must also have a good character and be a woman. Therefore, it took him half a month to find a few suitable teachers. Kim Yoon also found a yoga teacher for Mo. He hoped that through yoga, Mo could understand her body better. He had even formulated a plan in his heart, which was to make Mo accept him unknowingly, including everything about him. They slept on the same bed every day. Kim Yoon deepened their intimacy step by step, forcing her to open her heart bit by bit. On a daily basis, he would take her out for travel and exercise. When they returned, he would personally prepare a milk bath for her and massage her to relax her body. Under Kim Yoon's meticulous care, Gong Yimo was like a delicate flower that was slowly blooming. Kim Yoon counted on his fingers. There were still 7 days until his 18th birthday. Gong Yimo looked at the calendar on the wall and tilted her head in confusion. Just then, Kim Yoon returned. Gong Yimo ran out quickly. Brother. The 23-year-old Kim Yoon had the gentleness of the spring sun. He was calm and handsome. Every time he walked on the streets, he would receive a bunch of recommendations from talent scouts. At this moment, when he looked up, he saw a girl in a snow-white dress rushing towards him like a cloud. His heart skipped a beat and his body moved faster than his brain and hugged her. You're running so fast. What if you fall? Gong Yimo smiled slyly. How can that be? Big brother will catch me. As she spoke, she leaned forward and whispered in Kim Yoon's ear. Brother, tomorrow, accompany me to buy a bra. Kim Yoon was slightly embarrassed. Every time he accompanied Mo, something out of control would happen, so he rejected it. Didn't Mo just buy it last week? Could it be that she saw his shyness and was deliberately teasing him? Gong Yimo said in distress. Yeah. But what should I do? They're small again. It's all brother's fault for giving Mo breast enlargement food every day. Kim Yoon instantly became nervous. He said sternly, What? Who told you this? Gong Yimo stuck out her tongue. If it wasn't for alien teacher, she wouldn't have known that her brother was so bad. Anyway, I've grown up. I can't wear what I bought before. If brother doesn't accompany me, then I won't wear it. Most of the women here didn't wear it anyway. Kim Yoon's face instantly turned red. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that Mo was a little different in the past 6 months. She still had the same face, beautiful and pure, but she liked to tease him more and more. Often, he would almost lose control and stop abruptly. But Mo was alone every day and didn't like to go online or watch TV. How did he know? Perhaps it was just an illusion. It was as if Moa didn't want to wear a bra because it was too tight. Thinking of this, he secretly glanced at Gong Yimo's chest. He had to admit that with his diet and yoga, although Moa was only 18 years old, her figure, cough cough. Gong Yimo pulled Kim Yoon into the house. "Brother, I'm so hungry. I want to eat the cheese-baked prawns you made." Kim Yoon never refused her requests and tried his best to satisfy them. Now, his attention was diverted and he was thinking about the prawns. Anyway, it was only a few days. Kim Yoon thought to himself. A good-looking person would look good no matter what he wore. Just like now, Kim Yoon was wearing a shirt and beige trousers. He was wearing the super cute light blue apron that Gong Yimo bought for him. He was holding a spatula, but he didn't look out of place at all. Before Kim Yoon came back, the teacher would definitely leave. So, there were only the two of them in the house. Only she could see Kim Yoon's current appearance. Gong Yimo leaned against the door and admired quietly. Her beautiful eyes were half closed, and no one knew what she was thinking. Kim Yoon saw her and smiled gently. "Moa, if you're hungry, you can drink some corn soup first. It's ready." At this moment, he didn't have the dignity he had in the company. He was just like the brother next door, warming people's hearts. However, Gong Yimo knew that ever since her brother took over the branch last year, he had become very busy. Kim Yoon held a small flower-shaped bowl and was about to fill Gong Yimo's bowl with soup. He really enjoyed the time he spent with Moa after work. Even cooking was a kind of happiness. However, at this moment, a pair of mischievous little hands reached out from behind and hugged his lean waist. His back suddenly stiffened because he could feel that Moa really wasn't wearing a bra. "Brother, you're working so hard, you still have to cook for me after work. Moa has nothing to repay you with. How about a hug?" Kim Yoon's Adam's apple bobbed and his heartbeat quickened. He felt that the temperature in the kitchen had suddenly become very hot. After a while, he said, "Moa, you can go out first. Brother will be done soon." Gong Yimo rubbed against his back and shook her head. Then, she tiptoed and blew into Kim Yoon's ear. "No, I haven't seen brother for a day. I want a hug." Kim Yoon finally couldn't take it anymore. He put down the bowl and turned around. He held her face and kissed her fiercely. This little vixen only knew how to seduce him. After the sweet kiss, Kim Yoon sucked on her lips and tongue until they were numb. Only then did he let go of her. Is this enough? Chapter 820. His voice was hoarse and seductive. His eyes stared intently at her rosy face with a dangerous glint in them. Gong Yimo wasn't afraid at all. She hooked her arms around his neck. Her red lips that had been doted on were very delicate. She was as seductive as a rose in full bloom. "It's not enough. Let me kiss you again." In the next second, Kim Yoon satisfied her. He hugged her hips and pressed her against the clean sink, kissing her passionately. Gong Yimo blushed. As expected, teacher Ailian was right. She wasn't wrong either. Her brother was really waiting for her to grow to 18 years old so that he could eat her up. She smiled evilly. After the kiss, she still lay in Kim Yoon's arms. She wanted to see if her brother could really hold it in for 7 days. Wasn't it interesting? When Kim Yoon let go of her, his heart was beating very fast. He couldn't continue. Moa's fragrance was a fatal attraction to him. If this continued, he really couldn't wait until that day. "Moa, be good. Go out and wait for your brother." Kim Yoon's eyes were blurred, but his hands were hugging Gong Yimo tightly. He really didn't know if he wanted her to go out or not. Gong Yimo licked her lips. She felt that the teasing just now should be enough. She could clearly feel that her brother was trying hard to suppress something. If this continued, she was afraid that her brother would really eat her up. Thus, she stuck out her tongue and nodded very obediently. "All right then. Brother, let go of me. I'll go out and wait for you." Kim Yoon was very reluctant. Moa's body was fragrant and soft. No matter how he rubbed it, it felt so good to the touch. However, he kept reminding himself that there were only a few days left. On the day she turned into an adult, he would teach her about this before making a move, in case she couldn't accept it. As soon as he loosened his grip, Gong Yimo ran away like a wisp of smoke. After all, she was still a little white rabbit. Although she had read the book brought by teacher Erlian and wanted to tease her brother, when it came to the real situation, she would still be scared and shy and run away. Kim Yoon looked at his empty hands and suddenly felt that he shouldn't torture himself like this. But when he thought of the surprise he had prepared for Moa at the coming-of-age ceremony in 7 days, he felt that it was worth it to save the best for that day. At the end of the day, he still had the same old mindset from his previous life, that they could only sleep together after marriage. Gong Yimo blushed as she sat at the table, waiting for dinner. Soon, Kim Yoon finished cooking. Cream fruit salad, corn soup, baked prawns with cheese, and vegetable pancakes. It was simple and delicious. At this moment, Gong Yimo was very well behaved. As for Kim Yoon, he didn't dare to look at her because he had almost lost control of himself. At the cute little round table, the two of them buried their heads in the food. Seeing that Kim Yoon didn't dare to touch her, Moa's evil intentions were aroused again. At the end of the meal, she forked a piece of fruit salad with a fork and handed it to Kim Yoon. "Brother, you've worked hard." Hearing this, Kim Yoon smiled. The ambiguous awkwardness between the two of them seemed to disappear in an instant. He took a bite of the fruit that Gong Yimo fed him and praised, "Moa fed me very sweetly." As expected, Gong Yimo was very happy and continued to feed him fruit. After feeding him 2 pieces, Gong Yimo suddenly bit the fruit on the fork between her lips and stretched her neck for Kim Yoon to eat. The dark red cherry was wrapped by 2 pink lips and there was some cream on it. However, the person in question looked at you with a natural and cute expression, as if wondering why you didn't eat the fruit that she fed you. In the end, Kim Yoon couldn't resist the temptation. He pulled her into his arms and lowered his head to bite the cherry. Gong Yimo was bad and didn't give it to him. Kim Yoon directly crushed it with his kiss and greedily licked the red juice clean. Gong Yimo was teased by this kiss until her body went soft. Her big eyes were filled with tears as she looked at Kim Yoon. That kind of coquettish look was enough to drive any man crazy. "Damn it. Little rascal, where did you learn this?" Kim Yoon pressed her into his arms and panted heavily. Moa was too seductive. He was on the verge of going crazy and suppressing himself at any time. She was simply a sweet poison. Gong Yimo blinked and looked like she didn't understand. She said softly and innocently, "Brother likes to eat cherries and brother also likes to eat my mouth. That's why I thought of this idea. Brother, do you like it?" Her tone was pure and unpretentious. Yes. He liked it so much that he almost died. The storm in his eyes was suppressed again and again. He finally couldn't hold it in anymore and said in an overly hoarse voice, "Then what other ideas did Moa come up with?" The two of them looked at each other. Under that pair of dangerous and charming eyes, Gong Yimo's face finally turned red. The other party's slightly raised hum made her feel as if she had been electrocuted. She wouldn't be suppressed by brother. Therefore, she smiled sweetly. The next second, her fingers poked the cream and smeared it on her face. "Brother, Moa's face is stained with cream. What should I do?" That innocent gaze, that mischievous smile, and that fair and flawless face. Kim Yoon didn't even think about it and couldn't wait to lick off that bit of cream. His breathing quickened even more. That gaze was even more explicit and made Gong Yimo's heart jump. But at this point, she wouldn't admit defeat. She raised her eyebrows mischievously and asked, "Brother, what does Moa taste like?" Kim Yoon whispered in her ear, "Very sweet." "Moa is very sweet." His voice was flirtatious and it made Gong Yimo's body go soft. She sat on Kim Yoon's lap and moved a little. He gasped and glared at her fiercely. Gong Yimo was a little scared, but at this moment, she still asked calmly, "Brother, other than Moa's face, where else do you want to eat Moa?" She waved her finger in front of Kim Yoon's face with cream on her finger, teasing his last taut string. "Here." Her fingertip touched her lips and the next second, that bit of red lip was sucked into the man's mouth. Gong Yimo panted and smeared the rest of the cream on her neck. Then, she was choked by Kim Yoon. He buried his head in her neck and plundered her inch by inch. It was so hot. The other party's strength, eager kiss, and crazy gaze made Gong Yimo suddenly feel that something was wrong. She seemed to have broken her brother's bottom line. The next second, her whole body was lifted into the air. "Ah, brother, what are you doing?" Her delicate voice was like a temptress who wanted to reject but was also welcoming. This made Kim Yoon's movements even more urgent as he strode towards the bedroom. When he left, he even took the cream bottle on the table. Gong Yimo was trembling in fear. Was it coming? Was her brother going to eat her up? Was cream her condiment? She was still a little dazed as Kim Yoon pressed her down on the bed. Kim Yoon waved the bottle in front of her eyes and smiled seductively. "Moa, which part of your body do you want your brother to eat up, HM?" Chapter 821. Gong Yimo looked at Kim Yoon, who was right in front of her. Her cheeks were red as she asked, "Brother, don't you want to wait for a few more days?" I still have 7 more days." Kim Yoon mischievously pinched her big white bunny. "It's okay. You're not little anymore." His efforts in feeding her were not in vain. The results were impressive. Gong Yimo blushed even more. "Brother, are you going to eat me up?" This sentence made Kim Yoon's eyes burn. As he unbuttoned his shirt, he told her fiercely, "Yeah. Who asked Moa to be so naughty? She kept seducing me. I'm going to eat you up." Gong Yimo covered her eyes with both hands, but she couldn't help but peek through the gaps between her fingers. Finally, she said in a very soft voice, "Moa is willing to let me eat you up. Brother, can you be gentler?" Kim Yoon's eyes were almost spitting fire. He took Gong Yimo's hands away and forced her to look at him. Finally, he smiled seductively. "Moa, don't worry. I'm going to dote on you right now." As he spoke, he kissed her lips. Although Gong Yimo was afraid, she still hugged him and kissed him deeply. She seemed to have turned into a puddle of spring water and was teased by him endlessly. The two of them kissed until they couldn't bear to part. They couldn't help but tear each other's clothes as if they were looking for a vent. Their rationality had long turned into ashes in the passionate kiss, leaving only the most primitive desire blooming on the soft bed. Just at this moment, the doorbell suddenly rang. Both of them were stunned. At this moment, there was only desire in each other's eyes. So, in the next second, they continued kissing and entangling, ignoring each other. However, the doorbell was like a death knell, ringing again and again. Kim Yoon was frustrated. He hugged the girl who was almost naked and refused to move. It was Gong Yimo who pushed him. Her eyes were full of lust. "Brother, let's go and take a look. Anyway, the night is still long." How could Kim Yoon move when he heard that? His beast instincts kicked in and he tore off her clothes. "I don't care anymore." His voice was unbearable. "I'll die if I stop now." Since he said so, Gong Yimo couldn't say anything else. She regained her rationality for a while, but it was burned by him again. But the people outside the door were very unforgiving. The doorbell rang more and more urgently, making Kim Yoon almost explode. Gong Yimo hugged him and said coquettishly, "How about this, brother? Let's go and see who it is. If it's someone insignificant, we'll come back, okay?" Kim Yoon was so angry that he bit his lower lip. Then, he reached out and wrapped her in 2 bathrobes before carrying her downstairs. Gong Yimo could feel the other party's anger and the burning hot body through the bathrobe. They did not turn on the lights. When they reached the first floor, Gong Yimo secretly ran to the door, turned on the videophone, and turned off the sound on her side. The palm-sized videophone immediately showed the scene outside. When she saw who it was, Gong Yimo suddenly felt a chill run down her spine. This was because the people who came were not just anyone, but her mother and uncle. Kim Yoon also saw the 2 people at the door. Jin Shun was patiently pressing the doorbell while Shu Ayu said curiously, "They're not answering the phone, and the lights are on in the bedroom. Will they be okay?" Jin Shun thought for a while. "Are they not at home?" Kim Yoon hugged Gong Yimo, who was trembling all over. "Moa, what are you afraid of?" Gong Yimo looked at him and said helplessly, "Mom and Uncle, will they agree to this?" A cold glint flashed across Kim Yoon's eyes. In the dark, he held Gong Yimo's face and forced her to look at him. "If they don't agree, will you be with brother?" Gong Yimo nodded. "I don't want to be separated from brother." Kim Yoon asked again, What if they don't want you to marry me? Gong Yimo hesitated. What if her mother didn't want her to marry brother? She had never thought about this before. When it came to relationships, she was very slow. Seeing her hesitation, Kim Yoon gritted his teeth. Moa, are you not going to marry me if auntie doesn't allow it? Gong Yimo said weakly, Mom is very good to me. I can't bear to leave brother, and I don't want Mom to be sad. What should I do? Kim Yoon was very dissatisfied with this answer. Moa was his. In her eyes and heart, there was only one person who mattered. Mom. There was no need for that. So Kim Yoon pressed Gong Yimo against the entrance, not giving her any chance to back down. Moa, you don't have to worry about anything else. As long as you marry brother, brother will take care of everything else, okay? Gong Yimo wanted to say something, but due to her blind trust in Kim Yoon, she nodded. Okay, brother. I promise you, I won't think about anything else. She made up her mind and suddenly said, I want to marry brother. Even if Mom is against it, I want to marry you. Moa. Kim Yoon was instantly aroused. He kissed her face and her lips in surprise. His Moa, he really couldn't get enough of her. Gong Yimo was still enjoying herself when the doorbell suddenly rang, waking her up. How could she forget that her mother was still outside? She pushed Kim Yoon away with both hands and said shyly, Brother, stop. Mom and Uncle are outside. Open the door. At this moment, Gong Yimo's mother, Shu Ah-yu's voice came from the video call. Hubby, do you think something really happened to Moa and the rest? I just saw that the car was still there, and the lights on the second floor were still on. They definitely didn't go out. Jin Shan nodded. Could it be that they were listening to music with their headphones? Jin Shan thought of the young master's unruly behavior in the past, shook his head, and rang the doorbell again. The elders were outside the door, but Kim Yoon didn't stop. Instead, he became even more aggressive. In the dark, he hugged Gong Yimo's waist tightly and pressed her against the wall. He kept kissing and taking. Finally, he said with a smile, Moa, since they can't come in, let's continue what we were doing just now. Gong Yimo was stunned. She felt that Kim Yoon was crazy. Although the soundproofing was good, what if they heard? Kim Yoon reached out to untie her bathrobe. His eyes were full of madness. It's so dark here. We can't see anything. Moa, you don't have to be afraid, brother, don't be like this. The strong sense of shame made Gong Yimo want to escape, but Kim Yoon said pitifully. Moa, Dad and the rest suddenly came. We don't know how long they'll be staying here. Can you bear to see your brother like this? It's very uncomfortable. Gong Yimo thought that it was true. Now that Mom and Uncle were here, they couldn't be as intimate as before. Thinking of this, she also felt a little depressed. It was as if someone had invaded her life. She looked up and finally said, Brother, are you really uncomfortable? Chapter 8:22. Kim Yoon nodded furiously. Yes. Moa, I feel terrible. Gong Yimo's heart experienced a fierce struggle before she finally nodded. Brother, come with me. I won't regret being with you. Kim Yoon felt so happy that his heart was about to burst. He kissed Gong Yimo's lips in satisfaction before he carried her to the sofa. Moa, I'm sorry. There's still a few more days, but I can't hold it in anymore. Gong Yimo was very nervous when she heard the doorbell outside. She said uneasily, It's okay. Brother, but is it really okay to ignore Uncle and Mom? Silly girl. Kim Yoon nibbled her nose. If you open the door now, how are you going to explain that your phone can't get through and that you haven't opened the door for a long time? Gong Yimo nodded shyly before she relaxed her body. She held Kim Yoon's face in her hands. In the dark, her eyes were glistening as she spoke sincerely. Brother, I like you. Let me belong to you. Kim Yoon heard this and his heart was filled with sweetness. He could no longer control his feelings as he flipped over and pressed her down on the sofa. I love you. Moa. The doorbell rang urgently, but the breathing on the other side was even more hurried. The moment he entered, Gong Yimo frowned in pain. Her soft and suppressed moans were covered by the sound of her panting. Later on, the two gradually became one and immersed in each other. They didn't even know when the person outside left. The night was still young. To Gong Yimo, this was a natural fusion when their feelings reached a certain level. However, to Kim Yoon, this was the redemption that he deeply hoped for. This was the moment when a soul that had been lonely all his life was suddenly fulfilled. To be honest, in his first life, he was disfigured because he couldn't get what he loved. In the end, he died for Moa, although he didn't know. In his second life, he waited, guarding the impossible, and died alone. In his third life, he waited for the person he loved the most. Therefore, the satisfaction of this fusion was not something that ordinary people could understand. The next day, when Gong Yimo woke up, she was already in bed. Last night, Kim Yoon's yearning had exploded, and the consequences were shocking. He pressed down on Gong Yimo again and again. A gentle person had turned into a ferocious beast. Kim Yoon felt that even if he were to die now, he would have no regrets. As a result of her excessive release, Gong Yimo fell into a deep sleep. Kim Yoon was very embarrassed. He had always been very gentle to Moa. It could be said that it was the first time he had been so domineering and unyielding like last night. There was a satisfied smile on his face, and he felt a little proud in his heart. So this was what it felt like to be a man. He had finally left the ranks of virgins. But what's with this dreamlike feeling of not being able to grasp reality? He had been thinking about eating Moa every day, but why did it feel like he was dreaming? It was as if he had taken drugs. When Gong Yimo woke up, she saw Kim Yoon snickering. He had called his parents earlier and told them that they had gone to a friend's gathering last night. Someone had come to pick them up personally, so they did not drive. The gathering was too loud, so they did not hear the sound of the phone. Kim Yoon believed him and said that they would go out for lunch today. Therefore, he still had the whole morning to spend with Moa. Brother, her voice was hoarse from screaming too much. When Kim Yoon heard her voice, his eyes could not help but narrow. There was no other reason other than that this little vixen was seducing him again. He suppressed his desire and looked at Gong Yimo in annoyance. I'm sorry, Moa. Last night. I didn't do it on purpose. I should have restrained myself, Gong Yimo snorted. The next second, she frowned because she was not feeling well. Brother doesn't love Moa anymore. Brother didn't listen when I asked him to stop last night. Look at how badly she had been bullied. Kim Yoon blushed and tried to coax her gently. However, Moa was as if she was made of water. She snorted left and right and ignored him. Kim Yoon promised a lot of benefits and promised to listen to her in bed. Only then did Moa look better. She touched her stomach and asked for more. I want to eat the most famous hot dog in town for breakfast. Jin Yoon hurriedly got up and said that he would go and buy it himself. After Kim Yoon left, Gong Yimo continued to rest. In a daze, she heard the doorbell ring. Because she was too tired, she forgot about what happened last night and thought that her brother did not bring the key. She endured the discomfort and got up. She opened the door. Before she could say brother, it became Mom. Shua Yu was very happy to see her. Jin Shan asked them to meet outside, but Shua Yu missed her daughter and could not help but call them in advance. However, her smile froze in an instant because she saw the ambiguous marks on her daughter's pajamas. She was also a woman, how could she not know what those were? Gong Yimo saw that Shua Yu's expression was not right and realized the marks on her body. Last night, it was too crazy. There was no way to explain the marks on her neck. Shua Yu's eyes widened. She did not know how to face this scene. Just as she was about to say something, she realized that she was at the door and strode in. Gong Yimo closed the door silently. Like a child who had done something wrong, she followed behind Shua Yu. Shua Yu was suppressing her anger at first, but the more she thought about it, the angrier she became. Her round face was tense. She sat on the sofa and suddenly asked, "Where's young master?" Gong Yimo whispered. "Brother went out." "Brother?" Shua Yu sneered. Looking at her daughter who had grown into a beautiful woman, her heart was boiling with anger. This must be Kim Yoon's doing. No wonder. Back then, Kim Yoon suggested that Moa go abroad with him. But when did this start? Moa was only 16 when she went abroad. Kim Yoon wouldn't have done something to Moa at that time, She was angry and angry, but more than that, she felt guilty. It was also her fault as a mother. She did not have time to accompany her daughter. Her daughter was under young master's care every day. She might not even know what happened when she was eaten up. In an instant, she thought of many things. Seeing that Gong Yimo was afraid, she held back her anger and gritted her teeth. You! When did it start? She swore that if Kim Yoon had done something to Moa a long time ago, she would seek justice for her daughter even if she had to give up being Mrs. Jin. Gong Yimo lowered her head. Yesterday, this time, Shu Yu was really angry. If she had come 2 days earlier, wouldn't she have been able to save her daughter? Her hand holding the exquisite leather bag trembled slightly, but there was a trace of relief in her heart. She was relieved that Kim Yoon was not such a beast. Would he do something to Moa when she was 16? P2E. Fortunately, he still had some humanity left. Enough. You go pack your things. Come back with Mom the day after tomorrow. Chapter 8:23. Gong Yimo widened her eyes. She didn't want to leave, she didn't want to leave her brother. When Shu Yu saw her expression, she knew that she had been completely deceived by Kim Yoon. When a man wanted a woman, he would naturally do anything. But who was the eldest young master of the Jin family? His status meant that his love life had just begun. How could someone like him only belong to Moa? As for Moa, she was so innocent. Right now, she was probably wholeheartedly devoted to Kim Yoon. Shu Yu couldn't watch her daughter continue to make mistakes. Why, you're still unwilling? Shu Yu's tone was very unpleasant. She took a deep breath. Her eyes, which were exactly the same as Gong Yimo's, were filled with reproach and pain. You're an adult now. You're an adult. But do you know what you're doing? Who is the young master? He will have countless women in the future. How can he belong to you? Even Jin Shun had played with many women before marrying her. His previous wife was said to have died of depression. It was clear that men with power and influence were not good people. However, Moa was different. She was still so young. She had probably only interacted with one man, Kim Yoon. Her feelings were sincere and pure. She couldn't stand any dirty thoughts. Gong Yimo was frightened by Shu Yu's harsh words. She shook her head. No, my brother is different. Her brother was so good to her. Why would he look for someone else? Gong Yimo's stubbornness finally made Shu Yu angry. She stood up abruptly and reprimanded him with furrowed brows. Different? You've only been with him for a short time and you're already saying that he's different. He's only 23 years old now. He's still young. He only likes you now because he covets your young body and the novelty of it. Even if he really likes you, he'll fall in love with someone else in the future when someone better appears. Her voice was very cold. She had seen too many of these things. How many of those rich young masters were infatuated? And what good would come of being infatuated? It was the first time that Shu Yu spoke so harshly to Gong Yimo. In a few words, she overturned everything that Kim Yoon had done over the past few years. He treats you well now, but have you forgotten how he treated you a few years ago? Moa, you're still young, Mummy really doesn't want you to get hurt. In short, she didn't believe that Kim Yoon's feelings for Gong Yimo were sincere. He just wanted to play with her all of a sudden. Gong Yimo's chest heaved up and down violently. It was not like this. Although her brother did not treat her well a few years ago, her brother was no longer her brother. Now, her brother treated her very well. None of this was fake. Therefore, in the face of Shu Yu's doubts, Gong Yimo suddenly calmed down. Since she believed in her brother, why did she have to be so mysterious? Gong Yimo said slowly, Mom, let's not talk about it in the country. In the past few years abroad, only I have the right to speak. My brother is very good to me. Let's not talk about anything else. Let's talk about daily life. Every day, he would cook for me in different ways. He would think about my likes and dislikes and supervise my health. Mom, a man who doesn't treat you sincerely can wash his hands and cook for you year after year. Your words are too general. Shu Yu was slightly stunned. She really didn't expect that Kim Yoon would personally cook for her all these years. She thought that he hired a nanny or Moa to cook for him. Gong Yimo continued. When I said that I didn't want to study, my brother hired a tutor for me. When I said that I was bored at home, my brother skipped school and took me out on a trip. When I said that I didn't like him talking to other women, he kept a distance from all the women. When I said that I didn't like sleeping alone, no matter how tired he was, he would come back from the company at night. He would often reach home at 3 or 4 in the morning. He would satisfy all of my reasonable and unreasonable requests. He would love and care for me for 2 years. If this isn't love, and if this is playing with me, then I accept it. Gong Yimo wasn't stupid. Although she was perfectly protected by Kim Yoon and didn't experience any danger, she could still tell if a person was sincere or not. Shu Yu also didn't expect Kim Yoon to do this for her daughter. For a moment, her mouth was open, but she couldn't say anything. Gong Yimo suddenly felt her body lighten, and she smiled slightly. Mom, I admit that my brother protected me very well. To you, I'm a little ignorant of the world. My brother was also very domineering and deliberately didn't let me meet other men. Maybe in this world, there really is someone more suitable for me than my brother, but I met him first. His love for me made me very happy. Also, I hope that I can return the same happiness to him. I hope that Mom can help me. Shu Yu wanted to say something but stopped. In the end, her face gradually became miserable. You're too young. You don't know anything. She lamented, you're as naive as Mom used to be. Gong Yimo saw tears in Shu Yu's eyes. She couldn't help but pull her to sit down and said helplessly, Mom, don't cry. But when she said that, Shu Yu's tears fell. Back then, when I married Jin Shun, wasn't I also full of passion? Back then, he acted as if he was sick of the outside world and treated me well wholeheartedly. I thought that I was different and that our feelings were different. But later, in just a few years, didn't he still play with me however he wanted? How can a man's feelings be entrusted to him for the rest of his life? Shu Yu's words made Gong Yimo very uncomfortable. At this moment, Shu Yu grabbed Gong Yimo's hand and said earnestly, Moa, listen to Mom and leave young master. Mom would rather you find a more ordinary family and live a normal life than go through what Mom went through one day. Gong Yimo wanted to withdraw her hand, but Shu Yu held it tightly. Moa, take advantage of the fact that you haven't fallen too deep. Leave him. Your uncle will never allow the two of you to be together. Come back to China with me. Suddenly, the door was flung open with a bang. Kim Yoon grabbed the hot dog, his beautiful thin lips trembling in anger. Auntie, who do you want Moa to leave? His voice was like a ghost, with a bone-chilling coldness. God knows how long he had loved Moa. He had just gotten Moa and had not recovered from the happiness of being on top of the clouds, and someone wanted to break them apart? No. No one could take Moa away from him. The two women quickly stood up. When Gong Yimo saw Kim Yoon, her calm and rational side disappeared. She pouted as if she had been bullied. Brother, Kim Yoon quickly ran over and hugged her in front of Shu Yu. It had only been a few hours, but the two of them hugged each other tightly. Kim Yoon hugged Moa and looked at Shu Yu with an unfriendly expression. The atmosphere became extremely dangerous. You came here just to take Moa away. Chapter 8:24. Shu Yu panicked because Kim Yoon's aura was too strong. But when she thought about how he bullied her daughter, her anger made her tough again. Young master, Moa is just a child. Please let her go. Kim Yoon hugged Gong Yimo even tighter. Even the corners of his eyes were dyed red. If I let her go, who will let me go? Auntie, you gave birth to Moa, but she is mine. You have no right to take her away. Brother. Gong Yimo raised her head and looked at his exquisite side profile. Her heart softened. She firmly believed that Kim Yoon would not lie to her, let alone play with her. You. Shu Yu was furious with Kim Yoon. She pointed her finger at Kim Yoon and said coldly, what can you give Moa? Can you guarantee that you won't have a change of heart when you see those outstanding women in the future? That you won't be moved when someone throws herself at you? Moa wants a lifetime. What can you give her? Kim Yoon really wanted to tell her that he would give her his life. But this could not move the woman who had been affected by her luxurious lifestyle. So he said in a low voice, When we get married, I will transfer all the shares under my name to Moa privately. You can keep the agreement. If you find out that Moa is not living well, or if I do anything to hurt Moa, you can let Moa use this agreement to get me out of the marriage with nothing. Shu Yu was stunned. She did not expect Kim Yoon to say such words. She hurriedly said, "Impossible. Your father will not agree." Kim Yoon said firmly, "I have my ways to make him agree." Shu Yu was speechless. Kim Yoon's aura was strong. He hugged his daughter as if he was protecting her. Her mind was in a mess and she could not say anything. At this moment, her phone suddenly rang. Seeing that it was Jin Shin, she was shocked. After a while, he picked up the phone. I am at Moa's place." "Okay, you don't have to pick me up. We'll come over right away." After she hung up the phone, she looked at Kim Yoon with a complicated expression. "What about now? What are you going to do now?" Kim Yoon stroked Gong Yimo and coaxed her gently. "Moa, come, I bought you breakfast. Do you want to eat upstairs?" Gong Yimo felt very strange. Did her brother still have something to hide from her? However, she still took the hot dog and went upstairs. The hot dog was still hot, which showed how anxious Kim Yoon was. Kim Yoon looked at the marks on her body and felt a little distressed, but the gentleness in his eyes could not be faked. He did not want to hide what he was going to say from Moa. He just wanted to give her a surprise. After she went upstairs, Kim Yoon's expression turned cold. "Auntie, if you have any questions, you can ask me. I can give you a satisfactory answer and do it. However, Moa doesn't know anything. I'm the culprit, so please don't be fierce to her or force her to do anything in the future. In short, if you have any problems, you can come at me." How could there be a son-in-law who spoke to his mother-in-law like this? Shu Yu was depressed. She sat down and talked to Kim Yoon. She was a little afraid of the young master, but for her daughter's happiness, she could not be careless at all. However, the conversation was unexpectedly fast. Kim Yoon came up quickly. Moa had finished her breakfast and was changing her clothes. Kim Yoon hugged her from behind. "Brother." Gong Yimo had already calmed down. With her brother around, she did not need to worry about anything at all. Kim Yoon also knew what Moa had said to Shu Yu before, and he was very touched. His Moa loved him very much. Even against Auntie, she wanted to be with him. She believed in him and stood on his side unwaveringly. He was really touched. "Moa, brother will never let you down. What happened to Auntie, and what Auntie told you about other people, will never happen to us." In the mirror, the two equally beautiful people hugged each other quietly. They looked so harmonious. Gong Yimo sighed and pretended to be wronged. Actually, thinking about it, what Mom said makes sense. "Brother, when I'm old, will you still like me?" Kim Yoon intimately rubbed the tip of his nose behind her ear. "You'll never know how long I've loved you. No matter what happens, even if the mountains collapse and the earth shatters, you've given me a chance to hold on to you. Even if I die, I won't let you go." Gong Yimo's heart was at ease, and she smiled sweetly in the mirror. "Brother, I love you." Kim Yoon's heart throbbed, and he hugged her tightly. "I love you too." After a while, just when they were having a heartwarming moment, Kim Yoon suddenly laughed. "Moa, you don't know, when I left the house just now, I felt like I was floating. I really can't believe that I really had you last night." Speaking of this, he frowned in annoyance. Does it still hurt?" Gong Yimo turned around and hugged him back. Their eyes met, and Gong Yimo's eyes flashed with slyness. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed him, whispering flirtatiously between her lips. "It doesn't hurt anymore. Do you believe that you have me now?" Kim Yoon was in a daze, and he directly exploded when he was teased. The next second, he forcefully pressed her against the mirror and kissed her. Soft kissing sounds could be heard. Gong Yimo seemed to be resisting, because her mother was still downstairs. But how could Kim Yoon care about that? Who asked this rascal to seduce him? Suddenly, there was a cough. Gong Yimo hurriedly pushed Kim Yoon away, and the two of them looked at the door with blushing faces. Shu Yu's face was also red. Young people nowadays were really too intimate, and they didn't even close the door. Your dad is here, you guys. Hurry up. With that, she ran away as if she was escaping. Gong Yimo was a little surprised by Shu Ayu's change. Although she knew that Kim Yoon could handle it, she didn't expect him to do it so quickly. How did you do it? Being looked at by Gong Yimo's admiring gaze, Kim Yoon raised his eyebrows proudly. Chumph, don't you know who I am? I said before, leave everything to me. Moa, you just have to be happy. Gong Yimo smiled and nodded. The two of them tidied up and went downstairs. On the way, Kim Yoon's chauffeur drove, Shu Ayu sat in the front passenger seat, and the siblings sat in the back. During this time, Kim Yoon looked at Moa with great satisfaction. Although he didn't dare to do anything in front of Shu Ayu, because it was impolite, his hand was playing with a strand of Moa's hair. Moa was so cute, even her hair was so cute. Shu Ayu saw Kim Yoon's infatuated face through the rearview mirror, and her heart was slightly moved. Perhaps this was true infatuation. But what needed to be said still had to be said. Remember to restrain yourself in front of Dad later, okay? For the first time, she used the authority of a parent in front of Kim Yoon. Kim Yoon didn't say anything, but since Gong Yimo nodded in agreement, he didn't say anything. After all, he had already arranged everything, and whether Gong Yimo agreed or not was no longer important. Soon, the group arrived at the agreed place. Gong Yimo was a little nervous because she was still a little afraid of Jinshin. Chapter 825. When Jinshin saw his son, he was very happy because the father and son had not seen each other much in the past 2 years. However, judging from the rapid growth of the branch company, his son had indeed learned a lot here. Therefore, his attitude towards Gong Yimo was much better. Moa has grown up in the past 2 years. She's a big girl now. His eyes flashed with amazement. He did not expect the dark and skinny little girl to grow up to be so beautiful. He could not help but think of a marriage alliance. The thought flashed through his mind, but he did not say it because he had something more important to do today. Gong Yimo greeted him politely. In the past few years abroad, she was very knowledgeable and had been to many places. She could be considered to have seen a lot. She sat there with a restrained aura and was very eye-catching. If she had a good family background, it would not be an exaggeration to say that she was a princess. Kim Yoon saw Jinshin staring at Moa and frowned. He asked, Dad, why did you suddenly come to America? When Jinshin heard this, he smiled meaningfully. I'm here to see an old friend and also to see you. Kim Yoon felt that something was wrong. Sure enough, someone suddenly walked towards them. It was a beautiful Chinese woman with a beautiful mixed-race girl. The girl was very stunning. When she saw Kim Yoon, she was very attracted and gave him a few flirtatious glances. Kim Yoon was so angry that he laughed. He had investigated Jinshin before, so he naturally knew that this so-called old friend was Jinshin's former lover. Moreover, Shu Ayu did not seem to know that Jinshin had come to America for her. Shu Ayu felt that something was wrong, but she did not say anything out of politeness. On the other hand, the rich woman chatted enthusiastically with Jinshin. She introduced herself as Xue Lian. Her daughter's father was a foreigner and her daughter's name was Remi. At this moment, Shu Ayu's expression changed. Xue Lian. Although she had never seen her before, wasn't this the name of the white moonlight that Jinshin had yearned for? What was the meaning of this? He could not marry her mother, so he wanted his son to marry her daughter. What about Moa? She looked up at Moa and realized that Moa was just eating quietly. She did not seem to be worried at all. Her silly daughter. How could he not see the strangeness of the scene? It wasn't that Gong Yimo didn't realize that today's meal was like a blind date party, but because of her blind trust in Kim Yoon, she didn't say a word. Sure enough, Xue Lian had been secretly observing Kim Yoon. The more she looked, the more satisfied she was. Remi had tried to strike up a conversation several times, but Kim Yoon had ignored her. Xue Lian frowned and signaled for Jinshin to speak. Jinshin did not disappoint and said directly, Chiao, this is the wife of the CEO of SQE, a listed software company in Country M. This is her daughter. She is currently studying in a world-class medical university. I think that both of you are very compatible in terms of status, age, and other aspects. Why don't you try dating? If you are suitable, you can get engaged. Kim Yoon noticed that other than Shu Yu, the others were all very calm. He knew that Jin Shun had already discussed this matter with the CEO's wife in secret. Jin Shun said it in a notifying tone, as if he wanted to show Xue Lian how important his words were. Kim Yoon couldn't help but sneer. I've already changed my name. I'm Kim Yoon, and his pair of gorgeous eyes glanced at Remi. His sudden beauty made Remi reveal an infatuated expression. Kim Yoon's smile became even more sarcastic. Admittedly, this girl named Remi was very beautiful, but did Jin Shun think that he was like him, someone who couldn't resist beautiful women? Also, I don't think this young lady's appearance and status are compatible with me. It's just a listed company. Who knows how many companies are registered in Country M every day? Jin Shun was really willing to do anything to please the white moonlight in his heart. Jin Shun's expression changed and the originally awkward atmosphere immediately froze. Xue Lian's expression was also embarrassed. Shu Yu felt very relieved, but the girl named Remi didn't seem to understand Chinese. You don't even listen to your father, do you? Remi is beautiful and knowledgeable. What are you not satisfied with? His original thoughts were very simple. Remi was so good-looking and young. Compared to the girls introduced to Kim Yoon before, she was much prettier. Moreover, Kim Yoon was 23 years old and had desires. There was no reason for him not to like her. As long as he agreed to date her, he could force them to get married. He didn't expect Kim Yoon to be so rude. Kim Yoon snorted, if you like her so much, then marry her. Since you can't marry a mother, marrying a daughter isn't bad either. His words were arrogant and domineering, following the style of the eldest young master. Jin Shun didn't expect him to speak so bluntly. If they weren't outside, he would be so angry that he would flip the table. Even Xue Lian was very angry. Their family was now in a financial crisis. If they could rely on the Jin family, it would be a perfect solution. However, as the white moonlight in Jin Shun's heart, she knew that if she made a move, she wouldn't be able to maintain her image. She wanted to start with Kim Yoon, but this beautiful young man directly tore apart their face. Bastard. You bastard. Apologize to Remi. What kind of nonsense are you talking about? Kim Yoon shrugged and pulled Gong Yimo away. Seeing this, Jin Shun's eyes flashed with a trace of ruthlessness. You can leave if you want, but why are you pulling Moa away? Moa, come back to China with me. This time, he really touched Kim Yoon's reverse scale. He hugged Gong Yimo and suddenly lowered his head to kiss Gong Yimo's little mouth in front of Jin Shun. Then, to everyone's surprise, he made a strong announcement. Please get this straight. I already have someone I like, and it's Moa. Please don't introduce me to some random woman and ruin our relationship. This change stunned Jin Shun. Gong Yimo. Kim Yoon is actually with Gong Yimo. No wonder Kim Yoon wanted to take her abroad. This means that they must have done everything in the past 2 years abroad. Jin Shun was furious. He stood up with a bang. Bastard. Moa is your sister. How dare you lay your hands on your sister? Kim Yoon held Gong Yimo's hand. What sister? My mother only gave birth to me. Jin Shun saw that he couldn't coax him. Although the development was a little unexpected, he still had a ruthless move. He had to make Kim Yoon and Remi be together. If you don't let go of her, you're not a member of the Jin family anymore. He was proud of himself. He thought that Kim Yoon would definitely hesitate and then obey him. After all, no one could give up wealth and wealth. This was also the reason why he dared to directly make a request to Kim Yoon today. Unexpectedly, Kim Yoon didn't stop at all. He directly pulled Gong Yimo's hand and left. I couldn't ask for more. Gong Yimo was very cooperative and was pulled away by Kim Yoon. The corners of Shu Yu's mouth curled up slightly. Looking at Xue Lian's gloomy face, she revealed a happy smile. Chapter 826. After coming out, Kim Yoon felt very satisfied. He had never been a good father, yet he wanted to put on airs. He wanted to please the woman he liked in the past but failed to get, so he had to sacrifice his own son to maintain the appearance of justice. Did he think that no one would know if he didn't expose his little schemes? He wasn't going to play along. However, Gong Yimo was a little worried. "Brother, won't we implicate Mom if we do this?" Kim Yoon laughed. "Silly girl, have you forgotten who Auntie is?" He stuffed Gong Yimo into the car and kissed her little mouth affectionately. "Auntie is a very smart woman. She's Dad's secretary. It's been so many years, Dad wouldn't dare to do anything to her. Only his little darling was ignorant and still worried about others." Gong Yimo pursed her lips. Seeing that Kim Yoon was sitting in the driver's seat, she temporarily skipped this topic. "Where's the driver? Brother, where are you taking me?" Speaking of this, Kim Yoon was actually a little embarrassed. Before starting the car, he held Gong Yimo's hand and grinned. "Since Dad is against it, let's elope." "What?" Gong Yimo was stunned. "Brother, your company, it's already arranged." "Uncle, I've already been chased out of the family." Gong Yimo blinked. "Don't we need to go back and pack our things?" Kim Yoon leaned over and smiled as he whispered to her, "Except for you, I've already prepared everything." They had originally planned to leave on her birthday, but since the wedding night had been brought forward and there were people who wanted to sabotage it, some things had to be brought forward. Gong Yimo burst out laughing and held on to him as they leaned over. "Okay, let's elope." Kim Yoon had already prepared everything. He directly brought Gong Yimo onto the plane. The destination was a small island in the National Sea. He had already bought the small island. The weather was pleasant all year round. Everything had been renovated and was just waiting for the two owners. After transferring to a plane, they took a cruise ship out to sea without stopping for a moment. The cruise ship left after sending them to the island. There were only the two of them on the island, but they were both relaxed and happy, because each other was enough. Gong Yimo looked at the island in front of her and cheered, "Brother, you really bought this place?" She was very curious. She knew that her brother was rich, but this was too exaggerated. Kim Yoon wouldn't tell her that he had been preparing for this plan ever since he transmigrated. His father didn't give him much money, but he had a business acumen and had mastered many lost secret techniques, which he used to start his own business. In the past 6 years, he was no longer the prodigal son who relied on his father to squander money. When he helped the Jin family with their business, not only did he earn a lot of money for the Jin family, his own business was also flourishing. It was just that no one knew about it. And Moa didn't need to know about all this. She just needed to enjoy it. Seeing Kim Yoon nod, Gong Yimo was stunned. She looked around curiously. "Brother, are there any wild beasts here?" Her attention was immediately diverted elsewhere. Kim Yoon smiled and hugged her from behind. They looked at the island that belonged to them. "I've asked someone to clean this place up. There are only some docile herbivores and birds. Also, I've prepared another surprise for you." "What surprise?" Gong Yimo only felt that all the fatigue from the journey had disappeared. Her heart was filled with sweetness and anticipation. Kim Yoon pulled her along the coastline. The temperature here was pleasant at 24 or 25 degrees. The seawater brought a little warmth to their feet. Kim Yoon held their shoes in his right hand and pulled her with his left hand. They slowly walked towards their destination. There was the fragrance of plants in the air. The sun shone down warmly. Everything here was unbelievably beautiful. "Moa, do you like it here?" Kim Yoon suddenly asked amidst the leisurely sound of the waves. From the beginning, he had the idea of avoiding the world with Mo-er. He didn't need to worry so much and just wanted to spend the rest of his life with Mo-er. Therefore, he carefully prepared this island. There was a modern house on the island, as well as a wooden house. There was a dock and an airplane landing pad. Whatever they wanted, there would be people who would send it over by plane or boat. As long as it was possible, she was willing. Gong Yimo squinted her eyes and enjoyed the feeling of fine sand flowing through her feet. She smiled and said in a soft but firm voice, "Brother, I like to be with you, even if it's just the two of us." She turned her face to look at Kim Yoon. The wind blew his bangs, revealing his smooth forehead. He seemed to feel something and looked over. Those beautiful eyes and the cinnabar mole were especially alluring. Most importantly, when he looked at you, you could clearly feel that you were the one he loved deeply. Brother, do you want to stay with me for the rest of your life? Kim Yoon answered her with a passionate kiss. It was a quick touch and was especially clingy. I've wanted to be alone with you for a long time. Gong Yimo's sharp eyes noticed that Kim Yoon was blushing. She couldn't help but laugh. Dad must be trying his best to find you now. The Kim family has a big business and brother is so capable. What if the Kim family can't do without you? Kim Yoon raised his eyebrows. Let him look. I have to let him know that I'm not at his mercy. Also, there are all kinds of high-tech equipment here. Even if I'm needed outside, I can operate it remotely. Anyway, I'm yours and only yours. Mo-er. Gong Yimo wrinkled her little nose and snorted. Where's the promised surprise? Why haven't I seen it yet? Kim Yoon pulled her and sped up. I'll take you to see it now. They went around the shoreline and walked into the island. They passed through a small forest and the fragrance of the flowers became stronger. Finally, when Kim Yoon parted the dense plants for her, she felt that she had seen heaven. It was a small wooden house that only existed in a fairy tale world. The walls were full of flowers and the roof was covered with dense vines. The flowers spread from the wall to the ground. There were all kinds of flowers clustered together on the ground, surrounding two small hot springs. It was very intimate. There were trees beside the hot springs. In the dense steam, there were strings of butterflies hanging from the trees. When they heard that someone was coming, the butterflies scattered. More than 10 of them flew to the swing beside the small wooden house. It was as beautiful as a fairyland. Gong Yimo's heart was beating very fast because she had never seen such a beautiful place. Beside her, a man hugged her gently. Do you like this home? Mo-er. All of this belongs to you, including me. It's all yours. Gong Yimo's nose turned sour. Home? So home could be so beautiful. Seeing that she was touched, Kim Yoon's heart skipped a beat. He didn't miss the opportunity to give her a gift that he had prepared beforehand. Mo-er, this is the second surprise. Chapter 8:27. Gong Yimo's breathing quickened. Kim Yoon urged her to open it quickly. She smiled sweetly and opened the small box. It was a marriage certificate. Gong Yimo's eyes widened. Could it be that one person could get married too? Kim Yoon smiled proudly. See? Mo-er, you've been my wife since 10 days ago. Are you happy? Gong Yimo's heart was filled with sweetness. She was obviously very happy, but her nose was getting more and more sour. She seemed to have been spoiled by Kim Yoon. She couldn't stand even the slightest emotional fluctuation. Kim Yoon saw tears glistening in her eyes. It was obviously a happy day, but he actually felt uncomfortable in his chest. It was as if something was stuffed to the brim and was about to overflow. But he was happy. After transmigrating for 1,000 years, he finally found his home. Gong Yimo looked at the marriage certificate a few times. Although there were tears in her eyes, she smiled and hugged it in her arms. The way she treasured it made Kim Yoon smile even more brightly. He held her other hand and knelt down. I know this seems very cliché, but it's necessary. I hope my dear wife will pretend to be surprised. Gong Yimo smiled. I would never have guessed that you were going to propose to me and give me a ring. Kim Yoon smiled gently. He held the ring until it was hot and put it on her finger. Great, he finally completed this action. Kim Yoon smiled and looked up. Now you can express your surprise and happiness, Mrs. Kim. Although she already knew what was going to happen, when it really happened, Gong Yimo couldn't help but feel her heart beat faster. She couldn't hide her smile. Why was she so happy? Could her life really be so blissful? Kim Yoon's fingers rubbed against hers. He knelt down on one knee and kissed her fingers. My princess, I love you. Will you marry me? He asked seriously. The love in his eyes was enough to make any girl's heart beat faster. Gong Yimo pulled him up and threw herself into his arms. I'm willing. Kim Yoon finally breathed a sigh of relief after completing this historic moment. He hugged Gong Yimo and chuckled. Mo-er, your reaction is wrong. Shouldn't you be offering a passionate kiss at this time? Gong Yimo raised her head to glare at him, but he took the opportunity to capture her red lips and kiss her deeply. Greenhouse, swing, warm pool, and butterflies. The reflections of the man and woman were inseparable. In this place where no one would disturb them, they could continue to entangle each other until the end of time. Kim Yoon and Gong Yimo had a comfortable honeymoon for a week. Starting with a sweet kiss in the morning, they made breakfast together, washed the dishes together, fished together, read books together, swung on the swing, played games together, and soaked in the hot springs together. That's what a perfect couple is like, right? At night, in the greenhouse. There was also an ultramodern house with a landing pad, but Gong Yimo liked this wooden house. Colorful lanterns hung outside the wooden hut, illuminating the hot spring. The mist was misty and drifting, making it look like a celestial pond. The flowers were quiet, as if they were asleep. Gong Yimo and Kim Yoon sat on the big rocking chair in front of the door, snuggling up to each other. Brother, I feel so happy with you. What about you? Kim Yoon felt wronged. But you still call me brother. Gong Yimo raised her head and rested her chin on his shoulder. She looked at him with sparkling eyes. When did you start to like me? She thought for a while and said coquettishly, hubby, I want to hear the truth. Kim Yoon tilted his head and kissed her little mouth. He lowered his voice and said, I liked you from the first time I saw you. Gong Yimo slightly avoided his kiss and snorted. I'm serious. She was only 12 years old then, okay? Kim Yoon suddenly hugged her and turned over, pressing her under his body. The chair shook violently because of his sudden movement. Kim Yoon said seriously, Moa, do you believe in previous lives? Their breaths intertwined, and his voice was as gentle as water. I think I loved you deeply in my previous life. If there was a previous life, I must have loved you too. No matter how many times, as long as I meet you, I will always love you. I'm so glad that you love me too. Brother. Gong Yimo raised the corner of her lips and wiped away the trace of loneliness between his brows. I don't believe in previous lives. I only care about the present. I will make you happy and make you love me even more, Moa. Kim Yoon couldn't help but call out her name. Immediately, the throbbing turned into lust. It couldn't be helped. An old virgin who had been abstinent for a long time was very thirsty. Ever since he started to have sex, he wanted her almost every minute and every second. Gong Yimo chuckled. Brother, we still have to go back tomorrow. Didn't Uncle say that he approved of me? Kim Yoon said hoarsely, you have to call him daddy in the future. Also, I'll be gentler. No. It's not about being gentler, okay? Brother, you don't control yourself at all. Kim Yoon took off her clothes and said with certainty, I'll control myself in another 30 or 40 years. You're going into the room, who will see? Kim Yoon raised his eyebrows and stopped her from saying anything else. Slowly, a hint of lust leaked out from their lips, and the rocking chair started to shake rhythmically. Flowers clustered around them, and the starry night was their blanket. This was probably the so-called honeymoon, right? The next day, Gong Yimo was carried onto the cruise ship by Kim Yoon. Usually, Kim Yoon was definitely a good man. He was charming and devoted, handsome and gentle. But when it came to sex, he was like a different person. He was insatiable, as if he could only be sure that he had her at that time. Gong Yimo refused to change. Every time she became serious, Kim Yoon would show a pitiful expression, as if she had abused him. Then, the matter would be left unsettled. Gong Yimo thought to herself, just bear with it a little longer. When I get pregnant, I'll make him starve for a whole year. On this side of the bed, the Kim family was shrouded in dark clouds. Jin Shun did not expect Kim Yoon to be so powerful. When Kim Yoon left with Gong Yimo, he held back his anger and did not care. He even said some harsh words, but Kim Yoon actually dared to go against him. He did not pick up his calls, could not find them, and the company did not care. It was as if they had disappeared from the face of the earth. Only then did Jin Shun realize that this son of his had long been out of his control. Then, he realized that this son of his was not only out of control, but in just 6 years, he was already worth a lot of money. Jinshin found out that Kim Yoon had 6 high-end brand companies under his name, including legendary colored glass, ink-dyed ceramics, jade finger antiques. The products under his name were mainly sold overseas, and they were very popular with the foreign upper class. They admired the lost skills in the country, and the antiques passed down were forbidden to be sold abroad. Kim Yoon's company fulfilled this requirement. Not only could they buy such mysterious and beautiful things, but they could also promote the culture of their country. Chapter 828. Jinshin belatedly realized that in recent years, he had slowly stopped caring about things. Had he fallen so far behind the world? He also understood that the Jin family could not do without Kim Yoon. He had to come back. As for Gong Yimo, a cold glint flashed in his eyes. It was fine if he did not know in the past, but now, his son was so outstanding and smart. How could an orphan whose father had died early be worthy of him? Kim Yoon could find the most outstanding woman and go to the next level. The most infuriating thing was that Shu Yu was still arguing with him because of this. Shu Yu had a lot of secrets, so he could not force her too much. He could only tell Kim Yoon that he had already accepted Gong Yimo. Anyway, he had already thought of a countermeasure. After 2 years, when she returned to the Jin family again, Gong Yimo actually felt that things had changed. When she first came, she was only 9 years old. She was dark and thin, and the servants laughed at her in private. Now, Kim Yoon held her hand and walked in step by step. The servants around them did not dare to raise their heads. When Jinshin saw Kim Yoon, his face was still dark. Shu Yu thought that Jinshin had really acknowledged Mo. Although she was a little haggard because Jinshin and Xuelian had been very close recently, when she saw Mo's white and red face, she knew that Kim Yoon was really good to Mo as he said. She had nothing else to ask for. Kim Yoon ignored Jinshin's dark face and pulled Gong Yimo to sit down. He said frankly, "Since you want us to come back, it's better to make some things clear." When Kim Yoon looked at Gong Yimo, his eyes instantly softened. "I've already registered my marriage with Mo abroad." "What?" Jinshin and Shu Yu stood up at the same time. The difference was that Jinshin was angry, while Shu Yu was surprised. Kim Yoon looked at them calmly. "Don't be so agitated. Sit down and talk." Jinshin was so angry that his veins were throbbing. He could not help but roar. "Are you crazy? Who allowed you to get married? I'm leaving." Kim Yoon's face sank. He was sitting on the sofa with a gentle smile, but when he heard Jinshin's words, his aura changed. The air in the living room became stagnant. "So, you don't want Moa to be with me at all?" Jinshin was asked the question, and for a moment, he was a little flustered. After a long while, he said in a low voice, "Nonsense. I just want you to fall in love first. After all, you're still young. How can marriage be child's play? Moreover, she's only 18 years old. How did you get the marriage certificate?" Kim Yoon raised his eyebrows slightly. "She's overseas. She can get married at the age of 18. Moreover, with money, what couldn't he do?" When Jinshin heard this, his gloomy gaze fell on Gong Yimo. It was all because of this brat that his son had been bewitched. Otherwise, why would his rich, talented, and good-looking son want to marry her? Perhaps she already had a bastard child in her stomach, and she might even use the child to force him to marry her. He had seen many women like this. In short, in Jinshin's imagination, Gong Yimo was a completely scheming woman. The strange thing was that although this brat was silent, she did not move in the face of Jinshin's hostility, as if she had nothing to do with it. Jinshin was even angrier. It looked like this brat had a tight grip on Kim Yoon, which was why she could sit there so calmly. Little did he know that Gong Yimo had grown up. There was a moment of silence in the hall. No one had expected Kim Yoon to act so quickly. It looked like it had been premeditated. His brows were tightly knitted, and he suddenly said to Shu Yu, "You, take her upstairs. I have something to say to Yoon." Shu Yu wanted to talk to Moa, so she quickly got up and pulled Moa upstairs. Once Gong Yimo left, Kim Yoon's attitude became even colder. There was a hint of arrogance in his indifference, and he stared at Jinshin fearlessly. What else do you want to say? You're really muddle-headed. Seeing that the person in the way had left, Jinshan quickly reprimanded, "You're only 23. You're good-looking, have a good family background, and are capable. You can have any woman you want. Why must you look for Gong Yimo? You even want to marry her. She's just an adopted daughter of our family. How can she be worthy of you?" Kim Yoon was a little angry. He sneered, "Then who do you think is worthy of me? Xue Lian's daughter?" Seeing him ask this, Jinshan's attitude became gentler. "This is also your fault. If I had known about your situation, I wouldn't have randomly matched you. We're a family. If you want to have a career, do you think Dad will stop you? Why did you hide it from me?" Jinshan's expression contained a hint of pride, and he said with some relief, "I've seen the companies under your name and evaluated them. They have very good prospect. It's all Dad's fault in the past for not caring about you. If Dad knew that you were so capable, I wouldn't have done that. With your ability, you can definitely bring the Jin family to a higher level. Dad will find you a socialite in the capital. Our family has enough money. Now, we're just short of a little power." Seeing that Kim Yoon was even more displeased, he quickly said, "I know that you know me. I know you like Gong Yimo. If you want her to stay, it's not impossible." He suddenly relented, causing the furious Kim Yoon to raise his eyebrows. He really wanted to know what else he wanted to say. "Your marriage abroad doesn't count at all. Your parents didn't agree, and your relatives and friends weren't around. What kind of marriage is this? But now that you like Gong Yimo, it's new. We can ignore this matter for now, but you can't tell the public about your marriage. You have to hide it. When you meet the right person and get tired of Gong Yimo, it won't be too late to divorce her. Anyway, the Jin family won't be short of compensation." Kim Yoon was so angry that he laughed. His father was getting more and more interesting. In the past, when he saw that he was a gangster, he wanted to casually find a woman for him to marry. Now that he saw that he was promising, he wanted him to marry a girl who could help the family's power. If he was a little more capable, would he be able to sell her for a higher price? He stood up. "No need. If you don't agree with Moa, we'll move out. In the future, if the Jin family needs my help, I'll do it. But my wife will only be Moa. This will never change." Jinshan's face turned livid when he heard this. He didn't expect Kim Yoon to be so stubborn. "Don't think that you can go against the Jin family just because you have some achievements. I'm not old yet." Kim Yoon shrugged indifferently. "I don't need too much money. It's enough to live a comfortable life with Moa. It seems that I'd better leave. When you've thought it through, I'll come back with Moa." With that, he prepared to leave. At this moment, Jinshan suddenly asked loudly, "Does Gong Yimo have a child? Did she force you to do this?" Kim Yoon was a little impatient, but when he thought about how this body was this person's son, he had the obligation to be filial, so he replied in a muffled voice, "Don't worry, I'll bring your grandson back to see you in the future." Kim Yoon said in the future, but he didn't expect Jinshan to misunderstand. Chapter 829. Gong Yimo was really pregnant. Jinshan frowned. Due to genetic issues in the Jin family, it was difficult for women to conceive. Otherwise, he would have been a playboy for his entire life. Kim Yoon was his only child. Now that Gong Yimo was pregnant, should he keep the child or not? Jinshan sat alone in the living room and thought for a long time. In the end, he made up his mind. Kim Yoon was only 23 years old. He could not let a child drag him down. Xu Yu listened to Gong Yimo talk about what had happened during this period of time and let out a long sigh of relief. She looked at her daughter enviously. Not to mention the future, for now, her daughter had really found a good man. She also wanted to see the island and the greenhouse. What could be more blissful than having someone pamper you like a princess? "Seeing you like this, I'm relieved." She paused and said seriously, "Mom doesn't need you to worry about anything here. You just have to capture young master's heart and live your own life." Speaking of this, she emphasized seriously, "Right now, young master doesn't have any signs of that. You must take advantage of the fact that he only has eyes for you and completely control him in your hands. If possible, it's best to seize his financial power so that he can only listen to you. Gong Yimo gave Shu Yu a look, but Shu Yu did not understand and said mysteriously, "Also, when it comes to that, you have to learn to protect yourself. You're only 18 years old. What if you get pregnant? You're so thin now. Also, it's good for him to control himself. If he doesn't eat enough, he'll keep thinking about you." Ahem. Kim Yoon could not help but cough softly. If he did not stop now, what if his mother-in-law said something even scarier? He thought frantically in his heart, "Honey, don't listen to her. He's been starving for so many years and has only eaten meat for a few days." When Shu Yu saw Kim Yoon come up, she felt awkward. Gong Yimo snickered, "Mom, I reminded you." Shu Yu glared at her and then got up to leave. However, when she saw Kim Yoon, she held back her embarrassment and asked, "Well, what did your father say?" Kim Yoon looked very indifferent. "Maybe he still can't figure it out. I've decided to move Moa out first. I'll come back when he figures it out." Shu Yu nodded. "That's good too." Her thinking was very simple. Jin Shan only had one son, and sooner or later, he would have to give in. Therefore, Gong Yimo moved out with Kim Yoon. They didn't have dinner together that night. Jin Shan was so angry that he almost flipped the table. A few days passed in the blink of an eye. During this period, Jin Shan called him many times to ask him to go back. At first, his attitude was very fiery, but later, he gradually softened. Kim Yoon was not in a hurry at all. He was very comfortable with some high-tech things. He remotely controlled the company, so there would not be any trouble in a short period of time. That afternoon, Gong Yimo treated Hua to lunch. After not seeing her for 2 years, Hua was still wearing glasses and a black cotton dress. She had not changed much. On the other hand, when she arrived, she said that Gong Yimo had changed. She was as beautiful as an ancient fairy. When she found out that Gong Yimo and Kim Yoon were together, she was even more surprised. "Momo, you." Gong Yimo covered her mouth and said shyly, "Do you want everyone in the cafe to hear it?" Kim Yoon hugged Gong Yimo's waist and winked at Hua. "Don't you think we're a good match? Why are you so surprised?" Hua finally retracted her chin. It had to be said that the couple in front of her was really handsome and beautiful. They were much more eye-catching than the celebrities on television. Moreover, Kim Yoon's faint doting and gentleness towards Gong Yimo was enviable. Hua pursed her lips. "All right, we're a good match. Momo, you're so lucky to have such a good-looking boyfriend," Kim Yoon corrected her again. "We've already registered our marriage abroad." Hua could no longer remain calm. This speed was too fast. Momo was only 18. Before she could say anything, Kim Yoon's phone rang. He took a look and did not expect it to be Jin Shan. Not bad. A week was enough for him to think things through. After Kim Yoon finished the call, he sneered. Judging from Jin Shan's attitude, it seemed that he had already given in. He just wanted to make one last struggle and request for an exchange. On account of the fact that Kim Yoon had taken his son's body, he did not want to make things too awkward with him. Therefore, when Jin Shan proposed to meet, Kim Yoon thought about it and agreed. "I have something to do and need to leave for a while," Kim Yoon said with a smile. "Moa, how about you wait for me at home? I'm worried about you being out there alone." Because Jin Shan had requested to meet him alone, he did not say anything. After all, it would not be good if he and Jin Shan got into a fight and scared Moa. He was just a little worried about Moa's safety. Hua was unhappy. "Senior Jin, it's not right of you to do this. We haven't seen each other for 2 years and you're breaking us up like this." Gong Yimo also smiled. "Go ahead. It's not overseas. The security here is very good." That's right. Hua nodded. "I'll get the driver to send Momo back later." Kim Yoon thought so too, so he left first. Seeing him leave, Hua sighed with her chin in her hand. "Momo, I really envy you. My husband is handsome, rich and gentle. When will I meet my true love?" Gong Yimo smiled gently and looked at her gently. "You have to believe that there will be one." Hua looked up when she heard this. She suddenly felt healed by her smile. Momo had always been quiet and transparent. It was as if she didn't think about anything and didn't know anything. However, she felt that although those eyes were simple, they contained endless wisdom. That was why she had pestered Momo to be friends. In the end, Momo really became her only friend. Hua Hua smiled. "Come, let's go shopping. Dad gave me a lot of pocket money." Gong Yimo nodded and the two of them paid the bill and left. The sun was shining brightly outside, so Hua Hua asked the machine to wait for her. The two of them held hands and went shopping. When they saw beautiful clothes, Hua Hua would definitely let Gong Yimo try them on. Although she didn't like to dress up, she liked to dress up Gong Yimo. Gong Yimo had no choice but to take the clothes to the fitting room. Just as she was about to take off her clothes, the wall behind her was opened. A knife was pressed against her waist. Gong Yimo was stunned as a cold voice came from behind her. "Don't make a sound. Follow me." Gong Yimo's entire body tensed up. She could sense the other party's bloodthirsty aura. It was obvious that the other party was someone who had seen blood before. Therefore, she gave up struggling. She threw away the clothes in her hand and left with him. The criminal did not expect Gong Yimo to be so obedient. He was in a good mood. Originally, he thought that if Gong Yimo was not obedient, he would directly go to bed. After all, he was not afraid of causing a commotion. Chapter 8:30. Behind the fitting room was a dark and narrow alley. Gong Yimo asked as she observed the people behind her. "Who sent you?" The burly man who was escorting her pushed her. "What's the use of knowing so much? Anyway, you won't be coming back." When he pushed her, Gong Yimo saw his hand. Her pupils constricted and she said calmly, "It's Uncle Jin, right? Only he would see me as a thorn in his side. However, he shouldn't be going to the extent of wanting to kill me, right? Are you so sure that I won't come back?" The burly man laughed unscrupulously. "He wants to keep you alive, but that's only because of the child in your stomach. But after your child is born, you'll belong to us." Gong Yimo was shocked. When did she get pregnant? What would happen if the other party found out that she wasn't pregnant? The burly man had been observing her the entire time. Seeing that her expression wasn't right, he didn't hesitate at all and knocked her unconscious. How could people like them, who licked blood on the tip of their blade, give their prey a chance to speak? When they were in the fitting room, if Gong Yimo wanted to scream, he would definitely be able to deal with her before she did. He patted Gong Yimo's face with his big hand. This girl was really good-looking. Hua Hua waited outside for a long time, but Gong Yimo didn't come out. She felt a little strange and went to knock on the door. However, no one answered after knocking for a long time. She squatted down and looked through the crack in the door. Although the door was locked, there was no one inside. Hua Hua was shocked. "Where's Momo?" She had been outside the door the whole time, but she didn't see Momo come out. Hua Hua quickly found the store manager and kicked the door open. As expected, Gong Yimo had disappeared. After a series of surveillance investigations, the store manager was so anxious that his forehead was sweating. There were no cameras in the fitting room. They could only see that Gong Yimo had gone in and didn't come out. But why did she suddenly disappear? Only then did Hua Hua realize that she had to call Kim Yoon. Because she was in such a hurry, she cried on the phone. Seeing that Jin Shun had finally given in, Kim Yoon said that he would let Gong Yimo try being the young madam of the Jin family for now. He also asked Kim Yoon to take over the Jin family's businesses and combine his own businesses with the Jin family's businesses. He also had to make some achievements within 3 years. Kim Yoon smiled and said, "If I want to merge the businesses under my name, I still need Mo-er." Kim Yoon didn't understand what he meant. The next second, Kim Yoon's phone rang. As soon as he heard Hua Hua's cries, Kim Yoon had a bad feeling. He frowned and said coldly, "Don't be anxious. Tell me clearly, where are you?" Then, when he heard Hua Hua's words, he quickly grabbed his jacket and left. Jin Shun asked with a puzzled expression, "You haven't finished speaking yet. Where are you going?" Kim Yoon glanced at him suspiciously. However, even a vicious tiger wouldn't eat its cubs. From what he had heard from Jin Shen, the other party actually thought that Mo was pregnant. Since that was the case, Jin Shen shouldn't have done anything to Mo. Hence, he didn't say anything. He glanced at Jin Shen coldly and left. Jin Shen frowned. It seemed that the other party had succeeded. When Kim Yoon arrived, the police had already surrounded the clothing store. Furthermore, they found a secret door behind the small cubicle where the clothes were changed. However, the boss said that he didn't know about this at all and that the investigation was progressing slowly. When Hua saw Kim Yoon, she hurriedly ran over. Her eyes were swollen from crying. I'm sorry. I didn't expect such a thing to happen. Momo was just trying on clothes. Kim Yoon was very angry, but he didn't have the time to blame her. After all, he didn't expect such a thing to happen on such a bustling street during the day. The security of this country had always been very good, and the other party was too rampant. After greeting the police, their attitude became even more serious. They didn't expect that the missing person was the young mistress of the Jin family who had just married into the family. Then, the direction of investigation was even clearer. Kim Yoon carefully checked the fitting room. Because it was sealed, no one had touched the fitting room. The police had collected fingerprints, so he could check it freely. Kim Yoon picked up the clothes that Gong Yimo was going to try on and narrowed his eyes. The tag of the clothes had been torn off by someone, but he didn't know if that person was Mo. He walked back through the door of the fitting room and found a narrow alley. There was a lot of trash in the alley, but he didn't care at all. He used the light on his phone to search carefully on the ground. Finally, he found the small tag. Kim Yoon happily picked it up and looked at it carefully. It was a foreign language tag, but a few letters had been scratched out with fingernails. Kim Yoon hurriedly returned to the clothing store and pulled off the same tags to compare. He found that the letters that had been scratched out by fingernails were J and the number 9. Beside the number 9, there was a letter Z printed with fingernails. J obviously meant Jin. Could it really be Jin Shen? Kim Yoon trembled. He didn't expect Jin Shen to hate Mo to this extent. He actually hired someone to capture her. To think that he had pretended to accept Mo today. It seemed like it was all a lie. However, Jin Yoon was also very glad that it was him. Otherwise, how would he find his Mo even if he had to go to the ends of the earth? Kim Yoon ran back like a madman. Jin Shen was waiting for news. Strangely, he couldn't contact that person. He had no choice but to throw away the SIM card. He thought that no matter what, they must have taken her away. That was all that mattered. However, the next second, the door was kicked open by Kim Yoon. Before Jin Shen could react, Kim Yoon grabbed his collar. At that moment, Kim Yoon's murderous aura seemed to have materialized. Jin Shen was suddenly frightened by his fierce gaze and forgot to resist. "Where's Mo?" These few words were practically squeezed out from the gaps between Jin Yoon's teeth. Jin Shen panicked. Just as he was about to retort, Kim Yoon punched him to the ground. Jin Shen was stunned. He was actually hit by his own son. When the butler saw this, he quickly brought people over to stop them. However, Kim Yoon glared fiercely at them and no one dared to come close. They only helped Jin Shen up. Jin Shen touched his face and widened his eyes. "You're rebelling." However, he didn't expect Kim Yoon's voice to be so loud that it was almost a roar. "I know it's you. Where's Mo? Where did you hide Mo?" Jin Shen had a guilty conscience. The next second, his collar was grabbed again. The housekeeper and the servants didn't dare to pull him back, because Jin Yoon's appearance was too scary. "Let me tell you. All the shares of my 6 companies and all my money are under Mo's name. If anything were to happen to her, all the money and the secret recipe would be donated. If you want these things, return her to me." Kim Yoon's eyes were red as he roared like a wild beast. As for Jin Shen, he was stunned. Everything about Kim Yoon was in Gong Yimo's hands. Chapter 831. Initially, he wanted to play dumb, but when he heard this, he could no longer remain calm. He stared at his son and asked in disbelief. "You're lying to me, aren't you?" Would you be so stupid as to give everything to a woman? Kim Yoon was furious when he saw that the other party was only interested in those things. However, in a moment of desperation, he couldn't care less. He only hoped that Jin Shun would quickly understand the importance of Mo-er. He wanted to send her back as soon as possible, and then he would never come back again. Kim Yoon let go of him and showed Wen-han's photo to Jin Shun. It was signed by both parties. You'd better take a good look. I've already willingly transferred everything I have to her, and I'll take care of everything for her for the rest of my life. Other than the porcelain and colored glaze secret recipes that have already been revealed, Mo-er also has many secret recipes under her name, such as the ancient flower dew production method and the ancient silk dyeing method. The value of these things added up is equivalent to your entire Jin family. You'd better pray that she's fine. Otherwise, you can forget about getting any of these things. When Jin Shun heard this, he quickly took the photo and enlarged it. He carefully read the terms and conditions of the contract and realized that it was a free gift contract. How could he have such a stupid son? He actually gave his everything that was so precious to him, to a woman. Jin Shun's hands were trembling. He pointed at the phone and couldn't help but ask loudly with reddened eyes, "Why is there a clause saying that everything will be donated if she dies in an accident? Aren't you two married? Now that she's dead, shouldn't you be the first heir to these things?" Jin Yoon's heart was completely chilled. He calmed down and looked coldly at the father of this body. He slowly told him, word by word. He said slowly, "Because if anything happens to her and she dies, I'll die with her." Therefore, he didn't need any inheritance contract at all. He had even thought of having children in the future, and it wouldn't be too late to add the inheritance clause. However, all of this was ruined by Jin Shun. His cold voice stunned everyone in the living room, and they were even more shocked. How deep must the feelings be for a person to give up on glory and wealth after losing a loved one, only to seek death? Normally, when the people present heard such words, they would only laugh at that person's stupidity. But now, no one could laugh because Kim Yoon was serious. Any laughter would be blasphemous to his feelings. What they couldn't do, someone else could. And that person was more outstanding and hardworking than everyone else. And more single-minded. They had no right to laugh at such a person. Kim Yoon was even more speechless. He was a person who was used to being dissolute. He simply couldn't understand Kim Yoon's feelings. Suddenly, a whimper was heard. Everyone turned around and saw Shu Ah-yu squatting on the stairs, crying. Perhaps only Shu Ah-yu would understand Kim Yoon's love for Mo-er. She originally thought that Kim Yoon's promise was just empty talk. She didn't expect him to really do it and even add such a clause. Only then did Jin Shun realize that Kim Yoon wasn't joking. If anything were to happen to Gong Yimo, this son of his would seek death. He panicked. Although he didn't understand this kind of feeling, he couldn't risk his only son. Fortunately, he had made an agreement with the other party. He could only punish Gong Yimo as he pleased after she gave birth to the child. Now, Gong Yimo should still be safe. However, after this incident, his son would probably hate him. Seeing Jin Shun trembling, Kim Yoon roared angrily, "Hurry up and call them to send her back." This was the first time Jin Shun had been so frightened that he trembled. After thinking about it, it was indeed more important to find her first. After all, Gong Yimo wasn't alone now, but a mountain of gold. However, he used his own phone to call that number several times, but all he got was a busy signal. Kim Yoon watched anxiously from the side. "Who is this person? Who gave you his phone number?" Jin Shun finally frowned and told the truth. For a family as big as the Jin family, they naturally had their own shady business. However, they usually didn't use it, and usually didn't interfere with each other's business. This person called Xiao Li was the person he would occasionally use. As long as the price was right, this person could act as a middleman and help him contact specialized people to deal with specialized matters. This time, because he wanted to hide Gong Yimo first and not allow her to appear after she gave birth, the person he contacted was most likely an international human trafficker. Kim Yoon frowned when he heard this, but he still had a glimmer of hope in his heart. Since it was Jin Shun's people, as long as he paid, they probably wouldn't do anything to hurt Mo-er. However, He had to find this Xiao Li first. Since the phone couldn't get through, Kim Yoon prepared to go to the police. Just as he was about to leave, Jin Shen suddenly received a message on his phone. This message wasn't from Xiao Li, but from an unknown number. Kim Yoon's fingers trembled slightly, but he still clicked on it in the end. Mr. Jin, the contract's requirement is that after the hostage gives birth to the child will belong to you, and the hostage will belong to us. But now, she isn't pregnant at all. We will follow the instructions and never let her appear in front of you again. This news made Kim Yoon's eyes pop out of their socket. He took a deep breath and quickly called the other party, but he was told that the other party's phone was turned off. In other words, Moa had been taken away, never to appear in the country again. Kim Yoon felt a fishy taste in his throat and almost fell to the ground. But he couldn't. Moa was still waiting for him. Moa was waiting for him. When Gong Yimo woke up, she found herself on a ship. As a stowaway, she was locked in a small space. With the dim light, she realized that there were many women around her age around her. It seemed that she had met with human traffickers. Gong Yimo frowned. According to what that person had said, they had wanted to wait for her to give birth to the child, but when they found out that she wasn't pregnant, they decided to sell her directly. Gong Yimo moved her limbs and looked around. She had to escape. Don't waste your energy. Just then, a girl beside her looked at her and suddenly said in a hoarse voice, "If they find out that you have other thoughts, the consequences will be terrible." Gong Yimo raised her eyebrows slightly. What will happen? The girl shrank back and said in tears, "Those who don't behave will be injected with addictive drugs and then sold to poor countries. Those girls will be controlled by the drugs and become muddle-headed. They can't even run away. They can only keep receiving customers." At this point, she seemed to have thought of something terrible. Tears kept falling from her big eyes. Gong Yimo pursed her lips. What about us? She realized that all the girls here were quite good-looking. The girl hesitated for a moment. We will be auctioned. Gong Yimo's heart trembled. From the girl's words, she fully understood how dangerous her current situation was. She couldn't just sit around and wait for death. Otherwise, what awaited her would be hell. Chapter 832. Gong Yimo didn't know how long the ship had been sailing. She listened intently to the footsteps on the deck. Every time, there was only one person looking at them, holding a gun. They changed shifts every 2 hours. All the girls were numb. They had probably suffered terrible abuse on the way here. They were all hiding in their own corners. Suddenly, a girl said in a low voice, "No, we have to escape. It's the sea outside. I know how to swim. I'd rather drown than be manipulated by them." At this moment, the timid girl beside Gong Yimo shivered again. "If you want to leave, you can leave. I'm not leaving. I saw with my own eyes how they drugged my sister. It was too scary. After that, my sister looked like she was drunk. She didn't even react when they took turns. I don't want to become like that." The girls around her were even more afraid when they heard her words. The one who said that she wanted to escape also shut her mouth in despair. When she thought of the consequences, the courage that had just risen disappeared. The girl beside Gong Yimo said again, "I heard that good-looking people like us will be auctioned off. My family is rich. If someone buys me, I'll get my family to redeem me. Moreover, rich people are usually well-educated. If I don't want to, they probably won't do anything to me." When she said that, the girls suddenly didn't feel so repulsed by the place they were going to. If they could really meet a good person, a cold light flashed in Gong Yimo's eyes. If they were really good people, they wouldn't have bought such people from the black market. Although she had never come into contact with such things, she remembered the words of the person who had captured her. That was, she could never go back. It could be seen that the outcome of being auctioned off would be miserable. She couldn't help but look at the timid girl beside her. This girl had been saying that she was afraid from the beginning. Perhaps she was lying on purpose, so that they would give up struggling. First, they would scare them and then give them false hope. Gong Yimo pretended not to know. She listened to the commotion outside and waited until late at night. Late at night, when everyone was asleep, Gong Yimo suddenly opened her eyes. A stone appeared in her hand out of thin air. Speaking of this, it could only be said that God was on her side. The night before she was caught, she cut her finger while cutting fruit. When her blood stained the ring suddenly disappeared, leaving only a lotus imprint. Then, she obtained a strange space that no one else could see. She experimented and found that no one could enter this space. She tried putting in different things and finally found that as long as there were no strong vital signs, she could put in anything. In the end, before she could think of how to tell her brother, she was caught. Currently, there were rocks, fruit knives, pens, books, ID cards, some food and so on. There wasn't much else in the space. She aimed at the back of the girl's head and did not release any malice. She approached the girl as if she was a normal person. In the next second, she smashed the rock down. Although she looked skinny and weak, she was still very strong. Moreover, she had a good grasp of the acupuncture points. With one stone, the other party was knocked unconscious before he could even make a sound. At first, Gong Yimo wasn't sure if she was a spy planted by the enemy, but after knocking her out, she found a gun behind her. Gong Yimo's heart skipped a beat. It seemed that this girl was really sent by the enemy to monitor them and brainwash them. Gong Yimo also found a mini walkie-talkie on the girl's body. It was turned off. She felt a little regretful. If only it was a phone. She looked around and stood up quietly. 10 minutes ago, the person outside had changed shifts. However, he didn't move at all. Perhaps he was taking a nap. Gong Yimo thought for a moment and knocked on the deck. Her movements were very light, but the other party heard it immediately. A man's impatient voice sounded. What? Many girls were awakened by his voice. They didn't know what was going on and all of them curled up, afraid that they would be implicated. Gong Yimo narrowed her eyes and hesitated for a moment before speaking in a very delicate voice. Big brother, can you open the door? I want to pee. These girls usually excreted in a corner and didn't dare to disturb the people above. This was because one of them had gone up and never came down again. When they heard the girls' painful screams, they didn't dare to go out. Hence, the smell inside was really bad. However, Gong Yimo's voice was very seductive. She said that she wanted to go to the washroom, but it made the other party's Adam's apple move. He thought that it was already so late and the head of the in-charge was already asleep. If someone came knocking on his door, it should be fine, right? Moreover, there was a maid downstairs. If there was anything, she would inform them. Hence, he hesitated for a moment and excitedly opened the deck. A stinky smell rushed out. However, Gong Yimo's face was glowing under the moonlight. She was like a fairy who had accidentally fallen into a quagmire. He hurriedly dragged her out and locked the deck again. He knew this girl. Boss had brought her here personally. It was said that she was the daughter of a big family and could be sold for a good price. Boss had told them not to touch her. Gong Yimo looked at him shyly. Her seduction was written all over her face. I'm afraid that I'll scare the girls here. Let's go somewhere further away to pee, okay? The other party was a burly man who was 189 meters tall. When he heard this, he couldn't help but feel tempted. This kind of rich girl didn't know the ways of the world and wasn't a threat at all. Although Boss had told them not to touch her, but the rich girl had taken the initiative to invite him. If he didn't do it, he would feel sorry for his second brother. Hence, he directly dragged Gong Yimo to a room. Once he closed the door, he couldn't wait to pounce on her. Gong Yimo dodged a little and looked at him shyly. Big brother. If I follow you, can you ask them not to sell me? So she had a request. The burly man's doubts were dispelled. He secretly laughed at Gong Yimo's wishful thinking. However, he couldn't help but nod his head. He approached her with a lecherous smile. Then you must serve me well, big beauty. Gong Yimo nodded shyly and allowed the other party to push her onto the bed. Then, she took the initiative to press the other party's head on her shoulder. I'll make you feel good. Her voice was itchy with a hint of fear. However, A fruit knife suddenly appeared in her hand that was on the other party's back. About 1.5 centimeters below the spinous process of the third lumbar vertebra, there was a fatal acupoint called the Chihai-Yu acupoint. She ignored the other party's weight and slowly reached for the acupoint. Then, she pressed one hand on the man's head and smiled coquettishly. Without any murderous intent, she ruthlessly stabbed the knife in. Then, she felt the man's body on top of her suddenly stiffen and twitch non-stop. After a few moments, he stopped moving. Chapter 833. Gong Yimo pushed him away. She felt like she was in a dream. It was not that she had not thought of knocking him out, but his height and strength were unknown to her. For someone whose muscles and strength far exceeded hers, she might not be able to knock him out in one try, and it was impossible for her to have two chances. She touched his nose and checked his eyelids. She found that he was in shock. Whether he was dead or alive depended on himself. She did not have time to stay. She had to change shifts every 2 hours. Gong Yimo took away his gun and the key to the cabin where the little girl was locked up. Unfortunately, he only had a walkie-talkie on him. Gong Yimo estimated the time. There should be another 1.5 hours before someone came out to change shifts. The cruise ship was very big. She could not act rashly because there might be other patrolling people or people who were not sleeping. If she accidentally met one of them, a weak woman like her would not be a match for him. Before she walked out of the door, a bolt of lightning exploded in the sky. Gong Yimo trembled. She was actually afraid, but when she thought of the consequences of sitting around and waiting for death, she could only suppress her fear and other emotions. She could not be afraid now. She believed that her brother must be looking for her. She also knew that the other party was an organized transnational criminal gang. It would not be easy to find them. She had to give her brother a hint. Kim Yoon was indeed trying his best to find her. He used all his manpower and financial resources to find her. Finally, he got news of Moa's whereabouts. He was now on a plane. In such weather, it was very dangerous to take a plane. However, in order to find her, Kim Yoon did not care so much. After all, Moa was in a very dangerous situation now. Xiao Li said that the group of people he contacted was a group of transnational traffickers. Each of them lived a life of bloodshed and were not to be trifled with. He said that since the other party had already sent such a message, the Jin family would probably not be able to find them, because no one would know which country they were going to sell the human to. Moreover, even if they found her, she would be crippled. Those men were all extremely vicious. It was normal for a woman to die in a few days. Kim Yoon was so angry that he sent him directly to prison. He was even more eager to find Gong Yimo. In his meticulous search, someone had provided him with the exact location of Moa's smuggling route, but he didn't know which direction Moa's ship had gone. While waiting for news, he also joined the search at sea. In addition to hundreds of airplanes, there were also hundreds of ships that spread out day and night to search. They even joined forces with the maritime police to stop any suspicious ships for inspection. In short, he had to stop Moa before she left this region of the sea. Otherwise, it would be even more difficult for him to find her once she left this region of the sea. He had thought about it before. Even if Moa was really bullied, as long as she was still alive, he would definitely atone for his sins by her side. He had been too relaxed and neglected the fact that no matter what era it was, there would always be some crazy people. There would not be a next time. No more. On the plane, Kim Yoon stared at the sea while staring at his phone. When he sent a message, his hands were trembling non-stop. God, did you send her to my side just to let me experience the ultimate happiness before taking her away? If this was fate, he wouldn't accept it. He wouldn't accept it. Give her back to me. Give her back to me. Gong Yimo returned to the deck once again. This was a 3-story cruise ship. It was directly above the pressure plate. The second floor was the main control room. Usually, the generator of a cruise ship was below the deck. When she was locked below, she had heard the sound of the generator. It was not far away. She calmly observed for a moment. There was no one standing in the control room. It was very likely that they were lying on the chairs to rest. They had also set the route and let the ship sail automatically. She quietly observed for a while before carefully moving forward. When she reached the front of the deck, she felt the position of the generator room. The door was locked. She knelt on the ground and took out a stone, but she was not in a hurry to break the lock. She waited motionlessly for a long time. The sea breeze blew and she felt cold all over. Only then did she realize that she was covered in cold sweat. Then, there was a flash of lightning. Her eyes narrowed. The moment she heard the sound of thunder, she used the stone to break the lock. Lightning was also the time when she was most exposed. At this time, as long as someone in the control room looked down, they would be able to see her through the window. Gong Yimo's hands trembled slightly. That was why she did not break the lock earlier. She straightened her back and continued to wait patiently. Perhaps it was God's help. Soon, there was another flash of lightning. This time, under the cover of the thunder, she took a deep breath and broke the lock. Then, she quickly opened the door and walked down. There were blue lights in the generator room and the huge generator was emitting a rumbling sound. Gong Yimo was very talented in physics. She was also not bad when it came to machinery. She used what she had learned to observe carefully. Suddenly, she thought of something and her eyes lit up. This was a cruise ship that was half electromechanical and half diesel. It had two generators. One would be fully charged when it was on land, and the other was a diesel generator. In other words, this ship had a certain amount of diesel stored. It was a dual-power cruise ship. Now that time was tight, she had to stop the ship first. It was not that she did not consider directly finding the voltage box and cutting the wires, but this kind of cruise ship usually had backup power. Once she was exposed, there would not be a second chance. Therefore, she could only destroy the two generators in front of her. One was a diesel generator, and the other was an electric charger. Otherwise, if she went further, she would be dead once she crossed the border. Using the weak blue light, she carefully observed the two generators. In fact, her heart was not as calm as she appeared to be. In about an hour, the next person would come to take over. If she did not do what she wanted to do in an hour, the consequences would be very tragic. After calmly figuring out the structure, she used a fruit knife to pick out the two wires and cut them. The sound of the generator disappeared instantly and finally stopped working. During the automatic navigation at night, there was no need to accelerate, so the diesel generator was only an auxiliary. If she abruptly stopped it, the power of the cruise ship would not be cut off, but the people in the control room would be alerted. They would definitely think that there was a fault and come down to check. She was racing against time. Gong Yimo moved quickly. She opened the fuel tank and stored all the fuel inside into the space. Then, she took out a pen, found a position, and fiercely inserted it into the charger that was working. Suddenly, sparks flew everywhere. The power of the entire cruise ship was suddenly cut off, and even the backup power could not be turned on. The person in the control room who was originally moving leisurely suddenly panicked. When he hurried to the deck in the dark, he found that the lock had been broken. There was a spy on the ship. Chapter 834. Gong Yimo had already stepped over the railing, and with incredible flexibility, she shrank her body into the lifebuoy hanging outside the boat. Everyone on the cruise ship moved. From the sound of it, there were at least 20 men searching around. Only then did Gong Yimo feel afraid. She hugged her knees and curled up in the lifebuoy. Her whole body was squeezed into a ball. She wanted to cry but did not dare to. She heard many men roaring, but because the lock on the girls was still intact, someone opened it and looked around while enduring the stench, causing countless girls to scream in panic. They mistakenly thought that everyone was there. However, the person who was guarding them was dead. Who did it? After the power went out on the ship, a few men went down to repair it. They found that 2 computers were damaged and it was a little troublesome to repair them. At this moment, a plane discovered them and approached them. The people on the cruise ship panicked. There were many people searching during this period of time and they did not know the reason. The leader of the burly men roared, "What are you doing? Pick up your weapons. If it's the police, just kill them. Anyway, we're leaving the country tomorrow. This route has been exposed. We'll change the route in the future. When the burly men heard this, they calmed down. Then, the burly man ordered his men to throw the bombs onto the deck. They would first knock out the girls to prevent them from ruining things. After doing all this, everyone stared at the plane with unfriendly expressions. After the pilot lights were turned on, it slowly approached and a person came down the stairs. When Gong Yimo heard that the other party was only a plane, she gave up the idea of coming out. The people on the ship all had guns on them. They might even have more powerful firearms. Although the person who came was very likely to be looking for her, he would not be a match for this group of people. She would only be courting death if she came out. However, she had to give the people on the plane a hint and let them know that there was something wrong with the ship. However, she did not expect that after the plane lowered, the person who came down was actually Kim Yoon. Brother. It was actually brother. Gong Yimo hugged her knees tightly, restraining herself from making a sound. No, I can't come out now. They will kill brother. After Kim Yoon jumped onto the deck and saw so many people, he was a little suspicious. He took the search warrant from the Navy and asked the people on the ship to show their licenses, passes, and passports. Everyone was a little hesitant at first, but then they all went to get their passports. While waiting, Kim Yoon asked the captain who brought the pass, "Are you doing international tourism? Do you know someone called Sickle?" Kim Yoon's words made the other party silent for a while, because their boss was nicknamed Sickle. Kim Yoon asked this because the one who kidnapped Gong Yimo was this guy called Sickle. "No, I don't know who you are. It's late at night. Are you looking for someone?" At this time, Sickle walked out. He was very tall and had a fierce aura, which made Kim Yoon frown. "I'm from Sea City's Jin family. This Sickle has wrongly kidnapped my wife. So, I must find him. Now that this sea has been blocked by me, if you know this person, you can help me. Money is not a problem, but you must return the person to me." Sickle narrowed his eyes. He knew the Jin family's strength, but he did not expect them to be so crazy to find someone. When he thought about how the situation at sea was so tense for a woman, he felt depressed. Did the Jin family have so much money to burn? What kind of woman couldn't they buy with so much money? Unfortunately, I haven't heard of this person. Sickle shook his head regretfully and handed over his ID card. Kim Yoon's eyes darkened, then he took their IDs one by one and asked the captain to take him around. The captain said embarrassedly, "I'm sorry, there is no electricity now. There are too many rats on the ship, causing the generator to malfunction. It is now being repaired." As he spoke, he used a flashlight to take Kim Yoon around to check. Kim Yoon frowned and did not speak. Sickle followed behind Kim Yoon. If necessary, he could only use violence to solve the problem. There were rules in the industry. People who were on the ship could never be released, otherwise, it was likely to cause more trouble. So, although he regretted it now, he would never let him go. As for Kim Yoon, it would be best if he knew his place, but if he did not, at this time, the sky was getting gloomier. After checking, Kim Yoon's walkie-talkie spoke. "Young master, are you done checking? There will be a storm soon, let's go." If a storm came, it would be even more dangerous to take a plane. Kim Yoon did not find anything after checking around. He also went down to check the deck. There was indeed nothing suspicious, so he could only leave. What he did not know was that the other party had more than one deck behind. Kim Yoon waved his hand, indicating for the plane to fly lower. Sickle saw that Kim Yoon had decided to leave and was very happy. It was better not to cause trouble if possible. He patted Kim Yoon's shoulder. "You are a good man, I hope you find your wife soon." Kim Yoon smiled bitterly and nodded. When he glanced at his finger, his eyes suddenly froze. The next second, he grabbed the ladder and prepared to leave. Before he left, he seemed to turn around and boasted, "The rats on your ship are amazing. There are no rats on the island I bought." Then, he boarded the plane and left. Sickle frowned. He could not figure out what the other party's last sentence meant. Just then, the generator was repaired. He immediately ordered, "Speed up. The rest of you look carefully." There are no lifeboats on the ship, so the rat must still be on the ship. Gong Yimo's heart began to pound. There were rats on the island, the kind with white and yellow fur, and they were very cute. So, when her brother said that, it meant that he had found her. Brother! Come quickly, Moa is so scared. Kim Yoon had indeed found her. He made 2 phone calls and then looked at the ship below. No one knew what Sickle looked like or what his characteristics were, but the man just now only had 9 fingers. Inexplicably, he remembered the number 9 that was scratched out on the tag of the clothes Moa had left behind. There was also a Z imprinted on the nail. 9 fingers. He was the one who had kidnapped Moa. Everyone on the ship was carefully searching. Gong Yimo knew that the other party was likely to find her. Originally, she had planned to pour out the oil from her space and burn the ship. Then, they would not be able to repair the generator if they wanted to put out the fire. That way, she could buy more time and the fire would attract the people who were searching. But now that the power had been restored, she did not know when her brother would come. What should she do? At this moment, a man slowly approached. He was checking the number of swimming rings when he suddenly saw a strange swimming ring. Gong Yimo's heart was pounding. Was she going to be found? Suddenly, a buzzing sound came from the sky. The people on the deck looked up and were shocked to see hundreds of planes flying towards them. Chapter 835. Sickle was shocked. He couldn't care less about looking for her and quickly ordered the ship to move at full speed. Someone on the plane shouted, "Stop, no navigation, accept the interrogation." Sickle was a little panicked. At this time, countless searchlights came from all directions. At the same time, they were slowly surrounded by more than 10 cruise ships. And it was a navy ship. On the turbulent sea, there was lightning and wind. One ship was completely surrounded by dozens of ships, and there were hundreds of planes circling in the sky. Who would have thought that such a big battle was just for a girl? Warning, stop, accept the interrogation. Warning, stop, accept the interrogation. Sickle looked around and found that there was no way to escape. This was the end. Everyone was panicking, but Sickle was clear-headed. These people were all looking for the girl called Gong Yimo. If they took her as a hostage, these people would not dare to act rashly. At this time, he still didn't know that Gong Yimo had escaped. He thought that what happened on the ship was the work of an assassin sent by the enemy. However, when he went down to the hidden cabin, he found that Gong Yimo was not among the unconscious girls. Sickle then knew that there were no spies on the ship, nor were there any assassins. It was a little girl who had done something in the dark. The plane was getting closer and closer. Sickle had no choice but to grab a girl who was about the same size as Gong Yimo, cover her face, and walk out. In the dark, Kim Yoon saw this scene with the help of binoculars on the plane. Sickle was no longer in disguise. Everyone on the ship took out their weapons. They had so many women on the ship. Now that they were surrounded, there was no way they could escape. Their only chance was to use a hostage to escape. "I know you're looking for her." Sickle's voice came through the loudspeaker amidst the rumbling of the propellers. "Let us leave, or I'll kill her." Kim Yoon heard him and tightened his grip on the binoculars. It was too dark. He couldn't see if the other party was holding Moa hostage. However, when he thought that Moa might be in the hands of an evil person, he felt a lingering fear. Sickle saw that it was effective. When the other party stopped shouting, he became bolder. The dagger in his hand was firmly pressed against the neck of the girl in his hand. His threatening words came through the loudspeaker. "Back off. Make the ships fall back. I'll let her go after customs. Otherwise, I'll drag her down with me." "Young master, what should we do now?" someone asked Kim Yoon. Kim Yoon thought about it and called the military ship to retreat. Then, Kim Yoon's cold voice came from the plane speakers. "Let her go and I'll let you leave." Kim Yoon was very clear that the most important thing now was Moa's safety. If these people really let Gong Yimo go, he wouldn't mind taking care of them next time. After all, nothing must happen to Moa. He absolutely could not lose her. But how could these people believe it? Sickle sneered, "You want a hostage? Not bad. Young Master Jin, come down personally to redeem him. He was very clear that the person in his hand was not the real Gong Yimo. If the other party found out, he would definitely be in deep trouble. However, if he could control the young master of the Jin family, then there would be no mistakes. This was clearly a trap. Everyone thought that Kim Yoon would not go down. Wasn't this giving the other party a bargaining chip for nothing? Sickle saw that Kim Yoon was silent and said fiercely, "Have you thought about it? I'll count to 3. If young Master Jin doesn't come down to redeem her, I'll cut off her fingers. 1. As he counted, he gave his brothers a look. The girl who escaped must still be on the ship. If Gong Yimo did anything, they had to catch her before the other party. Therefore, Sickle was carefully observing while letting his subordinates search for more carefully. Kim Yoon was a little anxious. A middle-aged man in military uniform beside him said, "They might not have the person you're looking for. You can't go down. Otherwise, we'll be too passive." 2. Sickle's hands were sweaty. He said fiercely, "If you don't come down, I'll really cut off her fingers." How could Kim Yoon watch Moa get hurt? Even if it might not be her, Kim Yoon thought that he still had some martial arts foundation. The people below might not be able to subdue him. If the girl was Moa, he could not let anything happen to her under his watch. He could even die on the ship. If the girl was not Moa, it meant that they did not catch her. Then, he would not have to be restrained anymore. He could just kill the people on the ship directly. Therefore, when the other party counted to 3, he suddenly said, "Don't hurt her. I'll come down." Sickle's heart relaxed. Then, he looked around more vigilantly. If Gong Yimo was around, she might appear at this time and ruin his plans. Gong Yimo was really anxious. Although her brother knew some martial arts, they had guns. She could not let anything happen to her brother. Gong Yimo gritted her teeth. She could only take the risk. She suddenly sprinkled the oil in her space onto the sea surface and threw the lighter into it. The sea surface suddenly lit up. Although the people on the ship did not know because the movement was too small, the people on the plane saw it clearly. Kim Yoon's hand that was holding the door tightened. Moa was not in his hands. Seeing that Kim Yoon suddenly stopped moving, Sickle suddenly felt something and pushed the girl away from him. He rushed to the side of the ship. He panicked. Could it be that the little mouse was clinging to the side of the ship? "Moa, be careful." Kim Yoon's pupils shrank because he saw the gun in Sickle's hand. Gong Yimo heard the thumping footsteps. How could she not know that she was about to be discovered? At this time, she did not care so much. She could only jump into the sea. She did not know how to swim, and Sickle would not let go of this person who had ruined his plans several times. He almost instinctively fired a shot at the figure to prevent her from escaping. As for where the shot hit, it was none of his concern. However, before he could jump in to catch her, a figure jumped out of the plane when Gong Yimo jumped and the gunshot sounded. The two of them fell into the sea. Young Master Kim, the middle-aged man in military uniform, shouted. The waves were turbulent and swallowed the two of them in an instant. Kim Yoon struggled to swim downstream. He knew that Moa had not learned how to swim. The sound of gunshots kept coming from the sea surface. However, he turned a deaf ear to it. With the help of the searchlight from the plane, he kept going deeper and deeper. Finally, he caught the pale little hand. Moa. The sea water was strangely illuminated by the searchlight. Kim Yoon pulled and saw a trace of blood behind Gong Yimo. She seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep. Her eyes were closed and she had lost her soul. Kim Yoon had never been so scared. Moa, he pulled her into his arms. His heart felt like it was about to jump out. He could not imagine where the shot had hit her. The only thing he thought was that if Moa died in front of him, then he would bury them in the sea together. Chapter 836. Without her, he wouldn't be able to live. Jin Yoon held her face tightly in his hands and breathed a sigh of relief into her heart, as well as his last hope. Moa, don't leave me, don't be so cruel. I just got you. I waited my whole life to get you, please, don't be so cruel. Kim Yoon's tears flowed into the sea from the corner of his eyes. Suddenly, a miracle happened. Gong Yimo, who was originally lifeless, suddenly took a deep breath. Then, she clung tightly to Kim Yoon and sucked the oxygen out of his mouth. Moa. Kim Yoon widened his eyes. She was still alive. At this moment, whether it was fear, cowardice, or fear, they all disappeared. The pain of losing his love and the joy of regaining what he had lost made Kim Yoon hug her tightly. He wanted to never leave her again. The two of them were entangled in the water, and the gunshots on the surface of the water were incessant. The lights flickered, and the water seemed to separate two worlds. Finally, when the two of them came out of the water and gasped for breath, the chaos had subsided. The people on the boat had surrendered, and the people on the plane were surprised to find them. They lowered the ladder and came to rescue them. Gong Yimo had a hole in the thick book in her hand, and a bullet was embedded in it. Therefore, the sickle shot had only scratched her skin a little. Gong Yimo hugged Kim Yoon's neck tightly. Her heart couldn't calm down for a long time. She had almost lost her brother forever. Brother, are you willing to live on the island with me? Just the two of us, forever. Her voice was hoarse, and it was filled with the fear of surviving a disaster. Kim Yoon hugged her tightly and closed his eyes. He had never thanked the heavens like this before. He thanked Moa for not losing her. It was great that she was still alive. But he didn't want to experience this kind of fear a second time. Okay, let's go to the island. We'll live there in the future, and no one can separate us. Gong Yimo nodded and said after a while. What if Uncle doesn't agree? Kim Yoon said calmly, I will take care of him in his old age, but I will never forgive him for the rest of my life. Gong Yimo rubbed against her. What about Mommy? Bring her to the island. Let's live together, okay? Gong Yimo still wanted to say something, but Kim Yoon pushed her away and forced her to look into his eyes. As the plane approached, someone jumped into the water to rescue him. Hundreds of planes were circling in the sky, and dozens of boats surrounded the area. Everyone was nervous about the young master's safety. However, the young master only had eyes for the woman in front of him. His hair was wet from the seawater, and his eyes were shockingly bright under the searchlight. I'll promise you anything. I'll do whatever you want. If you want to travel around the world, I'll take my job with you. If you want to live on a small island, we'll go to the small island and never leave each other. You can have anything you want, I only want you. Can you swear? You will never leave me again. The hand that was holding her shoulders was trembling, and the water undulated. However, Gong Yimo could still clearly feel his fear. At that moment, all the fear in her heart disappeared. To be loved by someone without regard for anything, to be needed by someone so urgently, was such a blissful thing. Okay. I swear. Kim Yoon could not help but reveal a beautiful smile. He hugged Gong Yimo tightly again. That's great. We will never be separated again. The rescue continued, but the two people who were rescued were tightly hugging each other. They were really uncooperative. 3 years later, Kim Yoon was carrying a travel bag on his back, a briefcase in his hand, and a female handbag on his arm. He was even carrying a pile of shopping bags. The surrounding women could not bear to see him like this. What a peerless beauty. Why didn't they keep such a handsome man at home? Instead, they wanted him to be a coolie. Their hearts ached. They really wanted to go over and share his burden. However, the person involved did not feel that this was a kind of torture. Kim Yoon revealed a gentle smile. The haze and loneliness between his eyebrows had long been dispelled. His facial features were exquisite, as if they were carefully sculpted by the hands of God. That little mole under his eye was especially charming and captivating. Any celebrity standing next to him would be overshadowed. In the shopping mall, the number of women surrounding him gradually increased. They all wanted to know who was torturing this handsome man. Moreover, looking at the pile of shopping bags filled with female products, it was obvious that the handsome man had a girlfriend. They did not know what kind of woman could suppress such a stunning beauty. Many women secretly touched up their makeup. If the handsome man's girlfriend was not good-looking, they would have a chance. At this moment, Gong Yimo ran over with an ice cream cone. Her appearance was like a ray of light. If Kim Yoon was said to be a seductive seductress, then this girl was like the most holy light in the world. Many of the beauties who were lurking around Kim Yoon saw Gong Yimo walk over to him in a floral dress and heard their hearts break. With such a stunning girlfriend, it was no wonder that they did not attract any attention when they walked around in front of him. "Ah, I'm so tired. There are so many people in line." When Kim Yoon heard this, he immediately frowned. "If I had known, I would have bought it for you." "Moa, are you tired? Do you want to sit down and rest?" As Kim Yoon said this, he frowned with heartache. If it were not for the pile of things in his hands, he would have given her a loving hug. Everyone was speechless. They did not understand how tiring it was to buy ice cream. Gong Yimo pouted. After acting coquettishly for a while, she said, "It's okay. Hubby is the one who's tired. He just got off the plane and went shopping with me. How about this? Let's not buy it first. Let's go back to the hotel and rest." Kim Yoon nodded. "Moa will arrange it." Thus, Gong Yimo held his hand and the two of them walked out sweetly. Gong Yimo gave Kim Yoon a bite of ice cream and asked coquettishly, "Hubby, let me carry my bag. You're sweating." Kim Yoon quickly gathered the things on his body. "No. What if I tire you out? We just got off the plane and walked for so long. You must be tired. I'm a man. This is nothing." Gong Yimo heard this and quickly tiptoed to give him a sweet kiss. "Hubby is the best." Kim Yoon's eyes lit up with happiness and quickly said, "Moa, do you want to buy more? Is this enough? We have money. Don't scrimp. Your happiness is the most important thing." Gong Yimo licked the ice cream and said reluctantly, "Then let's buy another pair of shoes. We'll use it when we climb the mountain tomorrow." Yes. Moa can buy anything she wants. As long as Moa is happy. Gong Yimo could not help but say that sentence that she had to say more than 10 times every day. More. Hubby is the best. Their conversation was heard by the girls around them. One of the girls could no longer control herself and pinched her friend's neck as she roared, Why don't I have such a husband?" From afar, Gong Yimo smiled proudly when she heard this. Kim Yoon lowered his head and kissed her sweet little mouth. Because in this world, only Momo is the cutest. Chapter 837. Yuchi was a country with a high degree of female happiness, because their rulers were two handsome men. Sai Wuyen tossed the memorial in his hand to Shang Mingxi and said helplessly, Why can't I play around like Gong Yimo? Why do I have to sit here and read these boring memorials?" Although it seemed a little disrespectful, Shang Mingxi still said it quietly. "I'm the one reading all the memorials." Sai Wuyen, he waved his fiery red clothes and said after a while, Yes, you're a great contributor to Yuchi. Without you, Yuchi wouldn't be able to turn. Since you're so powerful, can I go out and play for 2 years before coming back?" The more he spoke, the more excited he became. "I heard that Gong Yimo went to the seaside and saw fish as big as a mountain. I really want to go." Shang Mingxi sat in the dark and read memorials, not even raising his head. "Go, when you come back, you'll realize that Yuchi has changed its surname." Sai Wuyen pretended to be bitter. "Little 1111, you really don't know how to joke. You won't really take over my country just because of a disagreement, right?" Shang Mingxi finally raised his head to look at him, then lowered his head as if his eyes were hurt. Shang Mingxi felt stifled. Why did he have to serve such a person as his master? Look at Yu Heng. Under Kim Yoon's governance, Kim Yoon was famous for being a benevolent ruler. Then there was Lu Yi. Because Dragon City Wuji was full of energy, his subordinates were also crazily reforming and developing. Their political achievements were on the rise. Not to mention Dai Yu State. Although the regent often took Gong Yimo out to play, there were no loopholes at all. Only their ruler knew how to play every day. Shang Mingxi secretly swore in his heart. The little crown prince could never be raised to be like his father. Speaking of the little crown prince, a very cute little Shota ran over excitedly. He was already 6 years old. It was said that Gong Yimo gave birth to a daughter this year. It seemed like they could match a pair. Imperial father, Imperial father. Little Crown Prince seemed to have discovered something interesting and was eager to share it with Sai Wuyan. Although this child was obtained by accident, when the Empress Dowager was still alive, it was because of this child that she decided to kill Sai Wuyan and cultivate him as a new puppet. However, Sai Wuyan treated him very well. Perhaps it was because he had lived a miserable life when he was young, but he would grant this child's every request. When he saw him enter, he immediately stood up from the dragon throne and hugged him in his arms. "Yo, little fellow, aren't you at the Imperial College right now? Why are you here?" The little guy looked very much like Sai Wuyan, with red lips and white teeth. When he heard Sai Wuyan's words, he immediately smiled. But before he could answer, a cold and gentle male voice came from behind his father. "That's right. I also want to know why His Highness the Crown Prince is still in class. Why is he here?" The little prince instantly stuttered. "Gigi Godfather is here too." If there was anyone the little prince was most afraid of, it would definitely be his godfather, Shang Mingxi. He was clearly smiling, but he could very gently punish him until he was hovering between life and death. Even Imperial father couldn't do anything to him. Seeing that the child was afraid, Sai Wuyan pulled him into his arms and glared at Shang Mingxi. "What are you doing? Do you know that you scared him?" Little Crown Prince saw this and shrank into Sai Wuyan's arms with a frightened expression. That's right. Godfather looks so scary when he's not smiling." Shang Mingxi looked at the adult and child, the veins on his forehead bulging. Finally, he revealed his signature smile. However, before he could say anything, the little prince hugged Sai Wuyan's neck with a wah. "Imperial father, Godfather looks even scarier when he smiles." Shang Mingxi, hearing the cheerful voices in the inner hall, the palace servant sighed. "Your Majesty, the relationship between the Crown Prince and the Prime Minister is really good." The other eunuch nodded repeatedly. "Wait a minute, was there something strange mixed in?" "It doesn't matter, as long as Yuchi is safe." On a boundless grassland, a handsome middle-aged man led a group of people and galloped on horseback. At the back of the group, a pony was running unsteadily. The middle-aged man stopped and glared at the little girl on the pony's back with a pair of deep blue eyes that were tinged with purple. "Are you Mo? Take a look at your horsemanship. Why don't you practice more?" A 13 to 14-year-old girl stuck out her tongue and rode the horse to Longcheng Wuji's side with great effort. "Imperial father, why can't I be like the princess of Dai Yu State and not leave the house every day? Going out to ride a horse would be too hot, okay?" The middle-aged man, who was Longcheng Wuji, frowned. "What are you talking about? How can Lu Yi's children not even know how to ride a horse?" "I know how to ride." The little girl raised her chin. "It's enough that I know how to ride. Imperial father wants me to catch up to your speed." Longcheng Wuji tried to control himself, but in the end, he couldn't. "Why are you so useless? Jin's speed is already slow enough. You said that you want to be like the princess of Dai Yu State. That princess of Jiyu State's riding skills are better than Jin's. Why don't you say it?" Longcheng Ayu Mo stuck out her tongue and thought to herself. She was just a mortal. How could she be compared to that person who was said to have become an immortal? Isn't this making things difficult for her? Longcheng Wuji thought of something and became depressed. He then said to the people behind him, "You guys continue. We will meet at Baiji Ranch later. Ayu Mo, follow Jin." Longcheng Ayu Mo was afraid. What should she do? Imperial father wouldn't punish her again, right? Don't. But she was frightened to find out that the direction of Imperial father didn't seem to be the ancestral hall where they were locked up, but the God Eagle Temple. Very quickly, they arrived at the God Eagle Temple. The God Eagle looked down on the earth with its wings spread out. The heart of the God Eagle was burning fiercely. Every Lu Yi person standing here could feel the greatness of the country and their own insignificance from the bottom of their heart. Ayu Mo was the same. She looked at the heart of the God Eagle with infatuation. "If only I was born a few years earlier. I really hope to be able to light the heart of the God Eagle with my own hands." Long Cheng Wuji looked at the statue and seemed to remember that time when he held up that girl and lit the stone heart. He couldn't help but say, "With her here, you won't have a chance." Are you? Mo pouted unhappily. Imperial father, you can't be so biased. Why can't I? Princess of Jiu State was a princess, but she was also princess of Luyi. Okay. Long Cheng Wuji glanced at her and suddenly said, she is skilled in martial arts, resourceful, kind and benevolent. Tell me, which part of you are better than her? Are you? Mo touched her face proudly. I must be prettier than her. Long Cheng Wuji restrained himself. In the end, he didn't attack his daughter's pitiful self-esteem. Are you? Mo couldn't help but ask when she felt Long Cheng Wuji's deep sorrow. Princess of Jiu State is so good. She even personally came to Luyi. Imperial father, why didn't you keep her back then? Long Cheng Wuji suddenly closed his eyes. Because back then, he promised Gong Dai that as long as he helped, he would let go. Swallowing the bitterness, Long Cheng Wuji smiled bitterly. There is no why. Children shouldn't ask so many questions. Are you? Mo was unconvinced. However, Princess of Jiu State was recognized as a saint by the 4 countries. She didn't dare to say anything overboard. She only asked, I heard that Princess of Jiu State went out to sea to become an immortal. Imperial father, do you miss her? Long Cheng Wuji walked in front and didn't answer. Miss her? Yes. He couldn't help but touch his chest. The nameplate that belonged to Gong Yimo was warm to the touch. She finally smiled. At least she would accompany him forever in another way. That was enough. Chapter 838. When they first met in the cold palace, he remembered very clearly that the murderous gaze was focused on him at first. He was startled before it landed on his imperial father. At that time, Gong Che felt as if someone was ruthlessly clutching his heart. For a moment, he felt as if he couldn't breathe. The ground was littered with corpses, the blood, and the cruel girl. This should be what he hated the most, but at that moment, that pair of eyes was deeply imprinted in his mind and could never be erased. Gong Che's dream was very unstable. The scenes kept changing. One moment, it was the scene where Moa kissed him in order to save him. In the dream, he once again experienced that touch of softness. He was so nervous that he couldn't breathe. Then, the scene changed. It was before he went to build the canal. He finally recognized his feelings. When he hugged her tightly on the bed, that throbbing made him tremble. Although he was nervous and palpitating, it was really sweet. It was as if he wanted to get more from her. But later, she rejected him. Not only that, she even got together with someone else. He couldn't accept it. They were blood relatives, so why didn't she choose him? His love was definitely no less than Gong Dai's. He so longed to be with her. Finally, he made a big mistake because of jealousy. His imperial father died because of him. And in the end, in order to save the woman he loved, he carried her and fell off the cliff. The moment he fell, he felt liberated. He could finally hold her in his arms openly and tell her, I'm sorry, I still can't be your brother. Because he wanted to be her man. If he couldn't get her while he was alive, perhaps death would be a relief. But he still couldn't accept it. Why couldn't he have her? She said that it was because he had let her down in his previous life. It was unfair. Why did he have to suffer retribution in his previous life? It would be great if he could return to his previous life. When she still loved him, he would hold her tightly by his side. Moa! Moa! Gong Che kept calling out a woman's name in his sleep, but what he didn't know was that Gong Yimo was right beside him. Hearing this, her pretty face turned pale. Gong Yimo never thought that a man would change so quickly. Clearly, the day before yesterday, she thought that she and this man were in love and were about to get married. But the night before last, the night before the big wedding, he came to cancel the engagement. Only then did she know that Gong Che didn't like her at all. He liked those girls from famous families. He only married her because Uncle Emperor liked her. His heart ached. It was also good. She was able to extricate herself from this relationship in time. She was also glad that Gong Che had found his conscience and told her the truth at the last second. However, she did not expect that after she left, Gong Che would suddenly faint on the street. As Gong Yimo did not run far, she heard the commotion and turned back to take a look. She found that he had indeed suddenly fallen ill. He had a high fever and it was very dangerous. During this time, Uncle Emperor came to take a look and postponed the wedding. But during the time that he was unconscious, he kept calling out a woman's name. Gong Yimo's heart turned cold. She came to Gong Che's side under an alias. Naturally, she thought that the mower that Gong Che was talking about was not her. What a joke. She liked him so much. It turned out that he already had someone he liked. He liked someone else but still wanted to marry her. Was it because that woman didn't want to marry him? Was she so cheap that she could only be a substitute? Gong Yimo felt as if something in her heart had been broken and could not be pieced back together. Forget it. When she heard that he was sick, she angrily left and ran back. Then reality gave her a painful blow and she no longer had any expectations. This was also good. At this time, the old eunuch De Fu walked in. Seeing that Gong Yimo's expression was not right, he understood the reason. The crown prince had been calling out another woman's name these past few days. That mower, he didn't know who she was. This was the first time he saw the crown prince use such a painful tone to call out someone. It was as if he couldn't get her, but he had no choice but to toss and turn in bed. When Gong Che called out mower again, Gong Yimo could no longer bear the humiliation. She coldly threw the towel into the basin and stuffed a bottle of medicine into De Fu's hands. Take one of this medicine every day. I'm going to rest. Yes, Miss Shong. De Fu carefully took it. The medicine in Miss Shong's hands was better than the medicine that His Majesty had bestowed. But looking at Miss Shong's expression, it was no longer as lively as before. She must have been deeply hurt by His Highness's actions. But Miss Shong was really a good girl. She was so angry the night before and fainted when she heard that His Highness had chased her out. But in the end, she still came back and took care of His Highness for 2 days. Even the imperial physicians were not as attentive as her. If not for Miss Shong accompanying His Highness at all times, His Highness's illness would have been very aggressive. It was very likely that it would have accumulated into a knot and he would be bedridden forever. When His Highness woke up, he had to talk about Miss Shong again. Hopefully, His Highness would change his mind. Gong Che did not know anything. He was still trapped in his dream. He only woke up in the afternoon. There was a faint scent of sandalwood. This was the calming scent that Gong Yimo had specially prepared for him. Sunlight shone in through the window, but there was no one in the room. Gong Che was still not used to his rebirth into his previous life. He slept for a few more days. When he woke up and saw the decadent Eastern Palace, he was stunned for a long time. His head was dizzy. He sat up and frowned as he rubbed his forehead. For a moment, he was not sure where he was or how long he had slept. Suddenly, many thoughts flashed through his mind. All the bones in his body were broken. Why was he still alive? Then, he suddenly remembered that he seemed to have come to another world. There was also a strange marriage, so he broke off the marriage. Then, he saw a woman who looked exactly like Moa. She said that her name was Shong Zhen. The Shong Zhen that he wanted to marry was Moa. Gong Che felt as though he was in a dream. He slapped his forehead hard twice. He was back. He was back in his previous life when Moa liked him. After thinking it through, the sudden surprise knocked him out. He sat on the bed in a daze. But very quickly, he remembered that he seemed to have angered Moa and made her run away. How could this be? Gong Che hurriedly got up. At this moment, the imperial physician and De Fu walked in. Seeing that Gong Che was awake, the imperial physician hurriedly said, "Your Highness was in danger this time. Even if you are awake, you can't get out of bed now. Your Highness, please go back to bed to rest." De Fu hurriedly supported Gong Che and said loudly, "Your Highness, you can just call this servant if you need anything. Why did you get up on your own?" How could Gong Che be in the mood to be entangled with them? But when he saw De Fu, he suddenly thought of something. He reached out and grabbed him tightly. How long was I asleep? Where's Moa? She really left. Where did she go? It had to be said that the current Gong Che was a different person. His aura was shocking. Old eunuch Defu was so frightened that he did not know whether to kneel or not. Your Highness. Your Highness. He scrunched up his old face and was about to cry. This servant does not know who is Miss Moa. Chapter 839. Gong Che frowned and hurriedly said, "It's Shang Zhen. Where is Shang Zhen?" So he was looking for Miss Shang. The old eunuch was happy. His Highness had finally thought it through. He knew how good Miss Shang was. He smiled ingratiatingly. "Your Highness, don't be anxious. When she found out that you fainted, Miss Shang was very anxious. Not only did she come back, but she also guarded you for 2 days. She must be very tired now, so she went to rest." Gong Che's eyes lit up. He didn't drive her away in anger. She came back again. Gong Che hurriedly pulled Defu out. "Where is she? Take me there quickly." Defu was baffled. Seeing Gong Che so anxious, he couldn't help but wonder if the Crown Prince was going to find trouble with Miss Shang. After all, the Crown Prince had always been indifferent to Miss Shang, unlike today. He hesitated for a moment and said, "Your Highness, you haven't put on your coat. As the Crown Prince, how can you be undressed?" Only then did Gong Che see that he was wearing an inner garment. He frowned and was very anxious, but he didn't want to leave a bad impression in Moa's heart. But in the end, his desire to see her prevailed. He had to confirm that she was Moa. He couldn't wait a moment longer. The old eunuch saw that Gong Che wanted to go out without putting on his clothes and hurriedly stopped him. "Your Highness, Miss Shang has guarded you for 2 days and 2 nights. She must be exhausted. She finally has a chance to rest. Let her rest more. Besides, she's in the Eastern Palace. She can't run away." Gong Che was burning with anxiety. How could he be willing to wait? He glared fiercely at Defu with an unfriendly expression. "I want to see her. Now, immediately." Defu trembled. He didn't say anything and obediently led the way. He thought gloomily that His Highness still hadn't thought things through. His expression just now looked like he wanted to eat someone. Sigh, he really didn't want to see Miss Shang sad. Shang Zhen's residence was very close to the Crown Prince. On the way, Gong Che quickly sorted out his thoughts. He remembered that Moa had told him that she had come to his side under an alias in her previous life. At that time, he was still depressed. In other words, the heavens had heard his prayers and sent him back to his previous life. At the thought of this, Gong Che wished he could punch himself. God was so kind to send him to the day before his wedding with Moa. This was supposed to be such a blissful thing, but he didn't understand the situation and did something wrong, causing Moa to misunderstand that he didn't want to marry her. How could he not want to marry her? He's wanted to marry her. He was even in his dreams. Gong Che walked quickly because he was in a hurry. Defu chased after him and shouted, "Your Highness, wait for this servant." "It's not this way." Gong Che waited patiently for the old eunuch. He couldn't suppress his anxiety, anticipation, joy, and fear. Gong Che's expression became increasingly tense. Defu was so frightened that he thought he was going to harm Miss Shang. He couldn't help but ask, "Your Highness, you're so anxious to find Miss Shang. Could it be that you want to talk about breaking off the engagement?" Gong Che was stunned. The old eunuch continued, "Your Highness, Miss Shang is already very sad. This servant saw her secretly crying last night. You want to break off the engagement the moment you wake up. Isn't this too cruel?" He didn't finish his sentence, but his meaning was obvious. It had to be said that this old eunuch was really kind. Gong Che felt terrible, but he couldn't say it out loud. He could only hope that he could apologize properly and beg Moa to forgive him. He secretly thought that Moa loved him very much in this life. She should forgive him soon and get married, right? Fortunately, he hadn't reported this to Imperial Father yet. Their engagement was still valid. When they finally reached the door, Gong Che became nervous. The afternoon sun was scorching hot. It shone on his forehead and made him sweat profusely. He seemed to be at a loss. Defu looked at him from the side and felt strange. "Your Highness, you aren't going in?" Gong Che was extremely nervous. His Adam's apple bobbed twice, and then he glanced coldly at this meddlesome old eunuch. "You can leave." Defu was shocked. He felt that he had overstepped his boundaries. When he heard Gong Che's order, he quickly left. Gong Che then took a deep breath and pushed the door open. In the room, there was Mo'er's unique fragrance. His eyes lit up. He impatiently walked through the outer hall and arrived at Gong Yimou's boudoir. The moment he saw her, Gong Che held his breath. It was as if this was a dream, and if he moved too much, he would shatter the dream. Gong Yimou didn't seem to be sleeping well. She was frowning and her eyes were red. It seemed like she had cried. When he thought that she was crying because of him, Gong Che wanted to slap himself. The person he yearned for day and night was right in front of him. And strangely, she was his fiancée. Was there a greater blessing than this? He actually dared to make her cry. If it wasn't for the fact that the timing wasn't right, Gong Che really wanted to beat himself up. Then he would kneel down and thank the heavens for their mercy. Finally, he carefully took 2 steps forward and carefully sat beside Gong Yimou's bed. He looked at Gong Yimou with fervent eyes. His breathing was hurried, and he didn't dare to reach out and touch her. His thoughts were still stuck in Mo'er's rejection of his future life. So when he faced his fiancée who was so close to him, his heart was in a mess. Only the fragrance from her body that kept entering his nose was so real. It was the smell that he had longed for 6 years. Gong Che didn't wake her up. He originally had a lot to say, but when he thought about how she hadn't slept for 2 days and 2 nights because of him, his heart was filled with heartache and sweetness. That sweetness made Gong Che suddenly smile. His originally gloomy handsome face was instantly revealed because of this smile, and it was very charming. Finally, he couldn't help but lean over and sniff her scent up close. Gong Yimou was in a deep sleep. Because of her afternoon nap, her fair little face was flushed pink. Her little brows were slightly furrowed, as if she was upset about something. Her long eyelashes were trembling slightly, as if she was very uneasy. Her pale little mouth was slightly open, as if she was spitting out fragrant flower petals, inviting him to pluck them. Gong Che's heart was originally beating very fast, but when his eyes gradually focused on her lips, it beat even faster. He remembered her taste, remembered her sweetness. Although he stole and snatched every intimate moment, he still couldn't help but fall for her. Because her taste drove him crazy. He couldn't help but lick his lips, and his eyes gradually turned dark red. He would just kiss her, and then when Mo'er woke up, he would explain everything to her. He promised that he wouldn't do anything rash. While his mind was still thinking this, his body had already leaned over and gently, trembling, sucked on her lips. It was really so sweet, so blissful. Could it be that the heavens pitied him for not being able to get what he wanted in his life, so they gave him such a great gift? "Mine, Mo'er?" He was very reserved in his kiss. When he thought about how she was his fiancée, and how the person she liked was him, his desire grew stronger. He gradually couldn't control himself, and boldly probed into her slightly parted red lip. This was the first time he was so bold as to suck on her sweetness. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.